Well, no, actually, what's gonna happen is your whole thing is what did Gibbs say? Careers are falling off like Ace Hood's Rolly Bezel or something because Ace Hood had the Ace Hood had the fake one and it fell off at the award show.
Oh man, I completely forgot about that. That's like a Youngberg chain level burn.
Like, it was such an offhanded remark in this song that wasn't about Ace Hood, obviously.
Yeah,
but he said rappers' careers falling off every day like Ace Hood Rolly Bezel.
Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock tick 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 faster.
Oh man, speaking of falling off, it sucks that like Gibbs is like kind of a piece of shit now who makes like mid-ass music.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's not ideal. And I was actually, you almost transitioned my transition because I was gonna say, speaking of Ace Hood in 2013 rap, we have we're 10 years removed from 2013. And a certain album came out in 2013 by a guy that also fell off. More personally than professionally.
And publicly, very publicly.
Yeah. Often, once called the mascot of the podcast, or the the resident. It was like the bingo card. He was the free space. We always just talk about him.
Unofficial topic of every podcast.
Yeah, for the long time listeners back in the 2018-19 day, they know about this artist. Of course, I'm talking about the one, the only Kanye West, Mr. Yeezus, Yeezy. He dropped Yeezus 10 years ago this month, and while this episode of Living Off Borrowed Time is talking about a different topic, we wanted to start with a brief retrospective on an album that I think was pretty polarizing at the time, but has kind of evolved and taken on a life of its own as one of Kanye's best and how do I phrase this? Records that has held up the best, despite the fact that you could argue the lyrical and song topics have not held up, considering where he went publicly in the last few years. So maybe it hasn't held up. I don't know. Has this album held up to you, Patrick? When's the last time you've listened to it?
You mentioned I wanted to listen to it.
I threw a lot at you. That was my fault.
I threw a lot, and I have a lot to actually digest. I had a lot to process there and a lot to respond to it with. Much like with the album itself at the time and now. First of all, I didn't even remember that this was a 10-year anniversary until you brought it up. And I really had every intention of revisiting it, which would be the first time since would you say this was his first major, well, it wasn't his first major public breakdown, I would say. Like, I think everybody would agree the first major quote-unquote breakdown was the obvious, infamous, best video of all time, VMAs.
Right.
Can't even call it a stunt. At the time, people said that there were rumors of a whole contrived conspiracy. He had the same manager as Taylor Swift. I don't believe that was the case. That it was that somebody was feeding him alcohol to get him to do that. That it was supposed to be publicity. I think given everything that's happened since then, that was all genuine. Like that that was a spur of the moment thing, because why else would he kamikaze his career like that? And I think all, like, given that he's done so much more public embarrassing shit since.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, the I'ma let you finish thing, like that was, I think in the grand scheme of public, I don't even know if embarrassment's the right word, but in the grand scheme of Kanye, you know, publicly showing his ass in various different ways, that is extremely low in the totem pole, because at least it was like, it was born out of a like it was not how do I say this? Sure, he was perceived to have kamikazed his career in the moment, but that was nothing compared to taking public stances 10 years later that are actively hurtful to a lot of people, not just stealing Taylor Swift's spotlight in 2009.
Correct. So anyway, so basically the Yeezus rollout was, I mean, if you look at the timeline, he bounced back from the VMA Taylor Swift thing, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, critically acclaimed, complete recovery, pretty much across the board. Everybody thought so. And that was actively contrived by him to be that, like, in terms of the way he assembled it. Like, the album ends with a standing ovation, much like Mad Villainy. Like, he assembled that expertly. And then Yeezus, in a way, was assembled that way. It was, and it wasn't. It was the beginning of him publicly on the fly not knowing how to finish things. Pablo would be the apotheosis of that, I think. Or at least, like, I think Pablo would be him taking this template and then actively actually not knowing how to finish it. But from what I recall about the Yeezus rollout, it was contrived spontaneity is the way I would put it. Like the SNL performance, which, by the way, I think still holds up as brilliant. That I did watch, and I still think that is absolutely brilliant. That is that, and the Twisted Fantasy SNL performances. I think you're never going to see that on SNL ever again, for fucking certain. No. And that's
you also will never see a performance that good in SNL again.
For sure, both of them. I think people forget. I think people maybe forget a little bit about the Twisted Fantasy SNL performances. Those are also remarkable aesthetically and performance wise. Even the Pablo ones are quite good. They're messier, but they're still quite good. But the Yeezus ones, the not for sale, sometimes they circulate as because of what he puts on the background there, like the quote unquote punk rock aesthetic of all of them. They're just fucking incredible. But like the whole Paris, the projector thing he does with that, the no singles, the no artwork, everything. Like, I think that was all contrived to look spontaneous and avant-garde, but it was also all thought out. And one of the things I remember from the critical reaction to it, obviously, the best reactions were by Weiss. Weiss had the best, most thoughtful, considered reactions to Yeezus. I think there were a lot of, as always with Kanye, knee-jerk, poorly thought out, surface-level takes, but Sun Ra, Jeff Royce, etc., knew what Kanye was up to and knew how to read him. And I think, I forget if it was Jeff or Sun Ra that had the take that this was a Bowie move, that he was very consciously, and I think that both of them were always very critical of Kanye. Jeff, especially in the future, like Jeff would absolutely savage the Wyoming stuff. I don't think he could see ghosts. But I think it was Sun Ra that was talking about how Twisted Fantasy and he didn't even like Twisted Fantasy, but he said Yeezus was still a raucous statement in the vein of Bowie, but it was a more effective raucous statement. And you can obviously take it that way, like the SNL performances. I know I'm all over the place with this, but again, that's the nature of discussing Kanye and the nature of discussing this rollout. And I think you can I was thinking about this, again, I'm being really discursive here. In the past month, I've had, without going too much into personal detail, and I think why you're going to have to help my job prospects a little bit, edit the intro a bit to where we shit on Ace Hood a little bit, cut in there. But I had a lot of free time in the past month, and I was reading a really great RYM list about the 500 worst Rolling Stone articles of all time, Rolling Stone reviews, and they cover a lot of David Bowie in there in the 70s. And one of the fascism. Who does that remind you of?
Yeah.
So I feel like this also was Kanye just starting to really following the Bowie footsteps. Like, he does the maximalism, then he does the avant-garde retreat, and then he does the we really need a strongman leader type thing. And I didn't even think about this until another RYM thing I read. Shout out to Back in 99, who maybe one day I'd like to have on the show to do our Capadonna episode, because Miza is no longer an RYM user. He would be the expert. He points out, he did a recent review of Pablo. It was the Pablo tour where Kanye started openly endorsing Trump. So I feel like it was even earlier, because I always associated the Trump pivot with Wyoming. Prior to Wyoming, he puts out that dog shit single with T.I.
Yeah, and that's when it was like up front in the music, for sure. Pablo just has
right. It's not in the music in Pablo at all, but it was Pablo tour that he starts saying it on stage.
Right.
Like, but I think that again, I think you can all trace this back to Yeezus. I think is where he really starts taking that sort of, it's a raucous sort of statement. And this is all without even getting into the music of Yeezus, but I think that also starts to reflect his loosening grip. And I think the music itself is a great way, like, I think that you can kind of retroactively view it as a portent of all that, which is a really, really long walk to say, yes, it holds up. It was great then for different reasons. And then, like, I think that it was polarizing at the time. Like, you listen to it for the very first time. And then I think what I want to do is stop fucking rambling like an idiot and then let you talk about your first time listening to it and your reaction to it. Because I think it was intentionally abrasive. But it was intentionally abrasive in a way that is still, much like the rollout, calculated. Like, because ultimately, still a craftsman. And it's calculated to be off-putting, but still from a mainstream craftsman sort of way. Like, the first track is super dissonant, but it's dissonant with Daft Punk, if that makes sense. Like, it's not dissonant like Mare's Bow.
Yeah.
So, and then Black Skinhead, like, obviously he's, trolling you, he's antagonizing you with the title. But what's the reference point there? It's either, depending on how you read the drum beat, like it's not, according to who sampled, it's not a sample, but it's invoking the beautiful people from another great dude, Marilyn Manson, who did, like that one.
Certainly nothing wrong with that guy, right?
And Kanye certainly wouldn't fucking drag him up years later.
No, of course not.
Again, so many weird fucking portents here, but it says a lot about the quality of the music that you can see all these, like, signs in the music, or like red flags, I guess, even, and the music itself still holds up. Literally the only thing that I can think of, because I listened to it fairly recently, I get, like, once again, I hadn't listened ever since he did the real no turning back pivot for me, which, as I've said on the show, was Nick Fuentes. I haven't listened to any of his projects. I listened to literally a handful of songs for review purposes that I kind of gritted my teeth through. There's like one song on the Game album or whatever. But before that, this song was a staple of my this album was a staple of my running playlist, except for I'm In It, which I grew to appreciate a bit over time, but never really worked for me. But other than that, for the past decade, this was a staple. And it always held up, even when he would do dumb shit in public. And I could call back to this and be like, yeah, we could see where that was coming from here. But no matter what, it always held up for me. And I could find more and more to appreciate with it over time, too. And we'll get to that, too, when we unpack the music. Because I think you said something in the server about how for such an abrasive album, there are so many moments of fucking beauty in it. And we can talk about those, too. But the first thing I want to get to, though, is what was your initial impression when you first, listened to it?
Yeah. So this was 2013. I think it was right around the time that I had just finished my freshman year. I was 15, and this was the year that I really got seriously into music. Just because I had a lot of time on my hands, and one thing led to another. I'm very voracious when I get into a new hobby. So, but Kanye, he wasn't a part of that. Kanye was somebody that, since I could basically recall what rap music sounded like, he had been a staple for me. So I was listening to the Kanye album regardless. And I was very familiar with contemporary hip hop because that was what I primarily listened to. But in 2013, my previous music listening was contemporary rap, from 2000 onward, and like some indie rock stuff at the turn of the decade there, and then like some whatever was contemporary pop. Needless to say, this was very jarring. Even though Kanye had, listening to Twisted Fantasy for a couple of years at that point, you were used to different things because Twisted Fantasy was different than what I had heard at that time because it came out, I think, when I was, 12, about to turn 13. So it wasn't, Twisted Fantasy was unlike anything I had ever heard. So I was used to that with Kanye. Yeezus I remember liking, and I remember really, because like I said, when you're getting into music, you read a lot of reviews. You just mentioned reading some not so good ones. But I remember reading a lot of the writing around Yeezus at the time and trying to discern why X person or X publication liked it as to whatever P person did. Because while it did have some negative reviews and it was polarizing like online, it was pretty well received critically. It was lauded for a lot of things, and rightfully so. So I remember first listen on site, very disorienting, not something I was used to. I remember being taken aback by some of the lyrics and stuff on like New Slaves and what have you. Blood on the Leaves also left me very disoriented on the first listen, and then I don't remember much else about the first listen because in the 10 years since, and especially in the period between like 2014 and 2018, I listened to this album a lot of times. I think this has been, at some point in my high school, college experience, I would say maybe college, overtook Twisted Fantasy as my most listened to Kanye record, and probably my favorite. It's one of those two. And I think just Yeezus, I think of all of his records, it's aged. It's definitely aged a lot. But something about it to me, just the music is still, it still feels razor sharp. It's kind of a miracle of an album, and how he stumbled into, I think, half stumbled into this like greatness, and how, yes, it was like contrived a little bit, and just in terms of how it was packaged and whatnot. But the music on here is just, there's something that transcends even how it sounds. There's an emotion to this record that I don't think he's had it since. He had a good amount of it on Pablo. Obviously, he had it on Twisted Fantasy, and he had it on 808s. But I think from like 808s to this album, this era of Kanye, there was some sort of raw emotion that I don't even know if I can describe. But it's something that I think has completely left his music. Even on Donda, an album that I liked, it completely left it. It's like so raw and so wholly unique, and it makes you buy into the whole he's a genius, yada 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 bullshit. Not that I'm calling it bullshit. I just think some of the reference is bullshit. And speaking as someone who used to revere him, so I'm calling myself out from 8 years ago. So overall, I think like this album, first listen, I liked it, and then 20th listen, I knew it was going to be around for a while. And the songs that I liked but kind of had reservations with, I Grew to Love. You mentioned I'm In It. Like, I fucking love that song, even though it's an objectively stupid song. But it also is, like, to me, like, undeniably great. The mismatch of things he puts in there. A song like Send It Up, you would not think would be great, but to me, it's like one of like the most quotable like songs from this whole like Kanye era. So there's a lot to it. And speaking on the writing, Lou Reed wrote a really good review for this album. Now this is years ago. I don't remember all of it, but he said something to the effect of like, if you like sound, listen to the sound that Kanye is giving you. It's awe-inspiring, and that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, I think it is overall, it's a manic ass album. It should have been a huge disaster, but I actually think it ended up becoming his best work. And I also think that he was never the same as an artist or a person after it.
I think that's an excellent way to put it. I think that was an excellent way, by the way, of Lou Reed, rest in peace, to put it. And he would be the expert on that, because Lou Reed had his fair share of disasters in the same way, experimenting with sound and distant and like, you know, avant-garde sort of things. And I feel like this is an album that plays at being avant-garde and in some ways is in some ways. I feel like the presentation is more avant-garde necessarily than I'm going to use that term way too much, I feel like already, than the actual delivery. Like certain things like the very beginning with the sound that I feel like is supposed to be like feedback just blaring at you with like, it sounds like plugging in an amplifier, I guess, with On Sight's intro and the Tonight break, the horn break on Blood on the Leaves sort of thing, the siren on Send It Up that's very abrasive. But what I think is most impressive about this is it takes what he sort of started doing on Twisted Fantasy was the Cast of Thousands collaborators. And on Twisted Fantasy, I feel like it's used to a perfectionist aspect of making everything sound in concert with each other. Like you have something like Monster where everything is assembled one after the other to build to like the Nicki verse, or So Appalled where everything works in like every verse works next to each other. If that makes sense. And it's just like Twisted Fantasy is a symphony and this is a brawl isn't the right word. I don't know, but like, because all these pieces should not work together. They're jagged edges, but they do. And I feel like this is maybe where, I mean, and Pablo would take this to an extreme in a lot of ways, like both in the rollout and the execution. Like that's where there are like 5 versions of Pablo, and then it would just go completely off the rails. But yeah, in terms of sound, like every track sounds different individually and next to each other, but put them together and it's just a remarkable piece of work. Like even the ending, like think about the way the album ends. It ends on a hard cut. Like how did that
it ends, I heard this from somebody, I don't know who it was, this is years ago, but he gives you the song you want to hear with Bound 2 at the last track. That's the old Kanye, right? That's 2007 Kanye. And it's on the last song after he gave you 9 songs of not what you wanted, theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, there's also that metatextual aspect to it as well. Like, and there's even layers to that as well. If you kind of think about, like, I always like to think of Send It Up a little bit, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, that siren, that's him kind of invoking the Dilla siren. And I might just be reading that there or not, but he's amplified it to such an obnoxious degree. And who does he have on there? He has a drill rapper on there.
True. Is it, can you get my friends in the club? Can you get my bands in the club?
Ride around on my back like a print, my body got back like Prince in the club.
I mean, that song is so funny.
I know, it's so funny. I think the other, like you talk about the writing, I think one of the big accomplishments of the album is that the lines are so stupid, but they all sound so good in context. With the exception of, I will say, I'm in it. I can see the argument for I'm in it. I'm not going to quote the lines from I'm in it because it's.
But I just think the putting a dance hall rapper on it and then like having like him do a feature, incredible, like, you know, impassioned feature, and then we smash cut Justin Vernon angelic ass white boy vocals over these like sirens and thumping bass in the background, and then like Kanye coming in like I'm in it. Like, it's just so audacious that he did that shit.
Yeah, like there is the like, and there's even an audacity of context too. Like you think about something like how do I put this? Like what he talks about on New Slaves, like slavery, which is, by the way, a topic that he would get way more, let's say, audacious in talking about in the future. And he's talking about, like, I would say that there are some really moving lines about his familial experience and the whole black experience on there. And then he ties it together with his experiences in the professional world. And he somehow makes that work, granted from my perspective, and I'm perhaps not the one that should work for. Whether or not it works for me should not be important. But for the purposes of the song, I think that works. And then you have the metatextual aspect of he brings in, like, you want Kanye to give you a soul sample, and he gives you that absolutely fucking heavenly outro with Frank Ocean, and he makes Frank sound like a soul sample. That's him metatextually giving you the old Kanye in a new way. And then you have Blood on the Leaves. Again, he takes something that's so contextually inappropriate with the Billie Holiday and what he's rapping about should not work together. It's audacious, but he makes it work. And then he has something as abrasive as the Tonight sample and the horn break, which he pulls together with the Tupac quote, which is one of my favorite moments on there. And then you have on another one of my absolute favorite moments is one of the stupidest fucking lines he's ever rapped on Guilt Trip. You know the line.
Yes, I do.
Spur, I'm rockin' chew, baka. But then he brings it in with maybe my single favorite isolated Kid Cudi melody of all time.
You ever, if you ever go to karaoke, Patrick, you gotta hold the air mic and be like, whoa, 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 like a Kid Cudi vocal.
So much than what you let me go. Whoa, whoa. Yeah, I actually quite enjoyed
Kid Cudi was really channeling like 2000s emo right there with that one. I respect it.
Yeah, I actually quite enjoy doing karaoke. I don't know if other people enjoy me doing karaoke. I certainly don't think they enjoy me doing Kid Cudi karaoke.
It's just you'll just hum the whole time instead of doing the actual lyrics. You'll just do the hums.
I'll just do Metamorphosis.
Right, exactly.
Just
but only the Cardi
right.
parts. Only the Cardi parts.
But yeah, I feel like it's an album of juxtapositions, and he's never I feel like he's tried to do that ever since. The only time he's really truly come close is Kids See Ghosts and isolated parts of Donda, and Donda was just way, way, way too scattered. But at that point, he was probably too far. And I really, really like Donda. You can listen to the Donda episode. I think that's actually probably one of our better episodes in terms of making a case for an album. And it also helps we put it up against a really bad album.
Well, first of all, that's one of my better ideas I've ever had, is just putting them back to back together, because I knew that there would be a nice runway of shit, and then it would be good.
I mean, Drake really served that one up like a softball across the plate, though, with their fucking...
Yeah, because, by the way, Donda could have been mid, and it still would have been light years better than the Drake.
But, yeah, it holds up. I mean, I feel pretty confident in saying that had I listened to it, which I wouldn't have, it was just a very personally busy, in terms of not having the time to listen to it. You'll probably remember when you brought this idea up. If you had brought it up and I was at my house, I would have listened to it, but I was having a very nice Father's Day in the park with my daughter, which is not the appropriate time to be listening to Send It Up, or I'm in It, or Blood on the Lead.
No.
So that's
or any song. I Am a God featuring God.
Yeah, it's also a funny album. Again, and I feel like that's another thing that Kanye's lost over time is humor. Say what you will about Donda, not a very funny album. Kids See Ghosts, although it does have some funny punchlines, not a very funny album. Donda too, not a very intentionally funny album.
No, the Kanye humor on the first three records, and then 808 is not much humor there. But then Twisted Fantasy, Yeezus, and Pablo, very funny albums. In a goofy way that isn't. It's like a hair corny, but it doesn't detract from it. Obviously, there's so many lines, but you mentioned Blood on the Leaves. Blood on the Leaves, to me, and I've always felt like this, is like the Runaway of the album. Different than Runaway, obviously, because it isn't as overtly melancholic. But he has the whole warbled auto-tune outro again. He has it feels like the centerpiece, even though you think, well, New Slave should probably be the centerpiece. But Blood on the Leaves feels like the centerpiece. And it's just once again, a bunch of things on a song that shouldn't work. And not only does he make him work, he makes him formulate into a highlight that's better than most of the songs that came out that year. It's just unbelievable to me that he was able to do that. And we haven't even talked about, New Slaves I think is a top 5 Kanye song, and I think this song is a top 10 Kanye song. We haven't even talked about Hold My Liquor.
Hold My Liquor I think deserves credit for,
because I think that song is actually a miracle in terms of, once again, putting disparate things together and them working to perfection.
Right. Hold My Liquor, I would say, deserves credit alone for fully selling me on Chief Keef. Chief Keef, I was already well on my way. But I would still say at that point, I was like, Chief Keef's a singles artist. But then I was just like, you know what? If he can do that, I owe him a full shot. Between that and Nobody, the song,
Right.
I was like, it can't just be that it's one of those things like where he's an artist that only works with Kanye, like, I don't know, Bon Iver, or a certain guy who put hands on Rihanna, who I can literally only listen to in the context of a
Kanye song, yeah.
Right. But
yeah, I know. I think you're 100% right, and just like the way that song comes in. I mean, the outro. I mean, the outro's on this at the middle of the record. The outro's on New Slaves, Hold My Liquor, and Blood on the Leaves. I mean, just beautiful. Like that's real music right there. Like there's just no other way about it. And the whole like, you know, okay, I smashed or I slightly scratched your Corolla. Okay, I smashed your Corolla is one of the funniest things he's ever said.
Yeah, there's so many. We could literally turn a whole episode. We could do a whole episode about this. So we should probably just, you know, much like the end of Bound 2, hard cut. No.
Yeah. Transition it, but at the same time, I think it was nice to have this retrospective because for me, as I've gotten older, it's definitely like bare minimum the second best Kanye record, and I think it's the album of his that if I had to pick one to listen to, I would listen to it just because of, like I said, it still feels like it's on the razor's edge. And one last thing before we go. And to do the actual topic of the episode, I know this was a dead narrative like 6-7 years ago. I hope we gotta stop with the Death Grips Yeezus stuff. At least I hope we did. Like, please, like, and this is coming from a person who, of all their, over, I think the Money Store is still like their defining statement. I still think it's a terrific record. Get that shit out of here. Like, it's not even close. They're doing something way different. You're basically just doing internet forum kids. You're just doing the shit that JPEG talked about, where you're putting one black artist against another black artist because they had a song that had electronics on it on an album. Like, get the fuck out of here. I'm sure even like MC Ride and company would tell you that was not Kanye. Kanye was doing like Chicago house and dub and dance hall stuff. The Money Store wasn't doing that shit.
No, yeah. Ride thinks you're dumb. Zach Hill thinks you're an asshole. Also, yeah, and that's going to be a recurring theme of the episode once we get to the proper episode is, you people in comment boxes need to fucking stop it. Yeah,
Jesus, it's gotten too bad. I used to be pro, but I've come around on anti-comment boxes.
Now, doesn't sound like Death Grips, doesn't sound like Dialect, it doesn't sound like Saul Williams. It sounds like Kanye West. It sounds like Chicago. No matter what dumb shit he does in public, this album will still hold up. Period. Point blank. End of story.
100%. And so now let's talk about some music from this year.
Yeah, and so basically, we've done this a few years now. You should already know the deal. Basically, loose format, similar to our year end, except we only really focus, like, there's going to be no order to it, with the exception of we'll settle on our favorite thing at the very end of the episode. But similar format to the year end, in that we're going to start with the worst stuff we've heard, maybe touch on some disappointments, some surprises, and then mostly focus on the good shit because we don't like to dwell on the bad things. But unfortunately, there were a few bad things, including some bad comment boxes, because y'all need to fucking stop it. Y'all need to stop caping for fucking landlords. Because I tell you to stop caping for fucking landlords. But we apparently need to have a discussion. But the first thing I'd like to apologize, because we're going to get right to it, is I feel like we, the podcast, invoked this. We willed this into existence, the worst thing I've heard all year. Because this fucking troll, this globlin, as it were, was not around for the better part of the past 10 years. I don't know where she was, but we mentioned her on a recent episode.
True. We did.
Episode, and I said we will never speak of her again, because I didn't think we were going to have to, because I thought she was well in our past. But Vanessa, V Nasty, she's back.
She's back.
Call the fire department, because DJ Smokey cannot stop his addiction. We need to have a talk with DJ Smokey too, and his addiction.
A dialogue needs to be started. Yeah, absolutely.
His addiction to working with not just mid rappers, bad people, the worst rappers. Worst thing I heard this year is DJ Smokey, V Nasty, and Christ Dillinger. I don't even remember what the fucking song is called. It's like Heaven Help Heaven some or other.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't listen to it a second time, so I have no idea what it's called. I put my ears
It
through
has
enough.
some terrible, obnoxious emoji cover art. Be Nasty goes not even 15 seconds before she uses that word, and she uses
Classic.
it multiple times.
Classic. Could see it coming.
Yeah, it's absolute dog shit. I'm actually more mad at DJ Smokey than anybody else because you know V Nasty is just going to be the worst thing you've ever fucking heard, and he's just and Craig
and DJ Smokey has been a person that we both have praised on the podcast throughout the history of this podcast. Because he's been a collaborator on great records.
He's done good stuff as of this year. I think he probably put out like the past 2 weeks actually, but
yeah,
but apparently this whole Shadow Wizard Money Gang shit is like really bad. Like apparently it's really horrible on social media. Like he's really into the meme shit, and there's no worse meme shit I can think of than dragging V Nasty out of wherever the fuck she was and doing this. Horrible. No one needs this. Other thing no one needs: Meghan fucking Trainor doing.
Now you talk about stuck in the mid 2010s. Jesus.
But she never went away. V Nasty went away for quite a while, at least. Meghan Trainor.
No, I guess Meghan Trainor never went away, but I don't think she had like a hit, But then she came back. She came back with a vengeance.
Well, no, she had that one song that Gucci, my Louis Vuitton, that like fake Amy Winehouse song.
Oh yeah, I try to put these things out of my memory. That was fair enough.
Now, I heard, like, my wife will sometimes have Top 40 radio on, and, like, I would hear this, like, twinkly thing that sounded like a really, really bad approximation of, like, the Mark Ronson, Amy Winehouse instrumentals, and I'm like, this is, like, obnoxious, and she's like, yeah, that's Meghan Trainor. I'm like, oh. And it's just like, okay, she just, it's not as bad, it wasn't as bad as old Meghan Trainor stuff, but it was her doing the same shit, and, but this is actively worse. It's called Mother. You've probably heard it at this point because it's a huge meme. It has a dog shit sample of Mr. Sandman. It's just her spouting a bunch of tired memes about mansplaining and like mommy dom shit. It has an even worse video. It has Kris Jenner in it. It's terrible. It's lazy. It's probably made her a lot of money. It's probably being defended by irony people. Apparently, she's like trying to spin herself as like an LGBTQ icon, which is cynical and gross.
Yep.
It's cynical. It's gross. It's lame. It's lazy. I don't think she's going to go away ever. Which I don't have this fear about V Nasty. I really feel like V Nasty is going to just like kind of, unless DJ Smokey just brings her around more, which I don't think there's any real danger of that. I feel like this was a one-off on that. It made me mad because she's that horrible and so far in the past, I honestly truly do feel like we invoked that because there was something that was so forgotten. But Meghan Trainor is the sort of like industry. I hate to use the term industry plant, but
it is sometimes it's applicable, and here we are.
So yeah, those are the two worst things I heard. Hate to feel like misogynist gangs, and the two worst things are women.
By women. No, actually, what you're doing is it's just performance art. You are evoking what it means to be an RYM comment box.
And also shout out to me. I wrote like 4 reviews of the fucking Meghan Trainor thing before they finally were able to be posted because she finally put a video up for it. So I haven't even watched the video. So I'm really devoted. Apparently, I'm a devoted hater.
You are. I was gonna say, was Meghan Trainor DMCAing your review?
Comment gone. But
I will add to one of the worst things I heard this year, which I don't think you have heard. And like, look, it wasn't the worst per se. I think it is very. I think it's more sad than bad. And this is the Space Ghost per Blackline Radio 4 mixtape. It just doesn't. Look, I am willing to give SGP a million chances, but it just was not good. There's not much else to say about it. Like I said, it was more sad than bad because it just sounds like it just sounded like he wasn't okay. So I'm, skeptical of like really shitting on it, but It just doesn't sound like anything that he has, like, even anything that's like okay that he's released. Like, it sounds like you're listening to something that shouldn't even be released. Is my conclusion from it. So there are, like, SGP in 2022 still put out like some good stuff, and there is room for optimism that he will like bounce back and still put out great shit, because in the last couple of years he's still done that. So this is not an anti-SGP take. This is coming from a fan. But even the diehard fans, shout out to Look at Go, shout out to Too Broke to Care. Even the diehard fans will tell you this wasn't it. So
yeah, I think I may have downloaded it. The thing about SGP is I kind of trust you guys to taste test it before me at this point, and there were negative takes on it. I was sort of getting the vibe from what you guys were saying that it was reminded me of, from somebody I'm a fan of, some of the Charles Hamilton stuff that comes out where you're just like, oh, Charles, like,
yeah, like why did he drop this? Yeah,
and with Charles, it's a lot more. He'll drop absolutely anything on such a small scale that it's just for such a limited audience. I think SGP has more of a reach than Charles, so this stuff gets out there, and you hate to see him get roasted for it. You just want him to do better, which comes across like a very pandering statement, but I mean, we're pro SGP. We're also pro Charles Hamilton here. And so this is not, you don't, I don't like, you hate to see it in that sort of like, roasty type way. But so, yeah, I didn't listen to it. Obviously, he's come back from worse. He's still putting out.
Yeah, because there were definitely points in time, a while ago where you didn't know. I mean, maybe not on the music, but it didn't seem like his personal life was anything that was like encouraging. So you're right. He has definitely come back from worse.
It seemed like he's real bad, like Twitter spree lately. Like it seems like he's kind of not attacking people indiscriminately, or as much.
I also want to say that on top of things that suck. Now this is not something that you have listened to, but. So there's been a lot of writing and music journalism and shit this year about the Dime Square scene in New York. It's basically like a speaking of contrived, like a contrived scene of like raves and like partying and a type of music that is being called like indie sleaze, but really it's like it's not really like indie about it.
Sounds like
more
core.
Yeah, it's like stuff that it's like, oh, it can be kind of like it's stuff that's like doing a poor imitation of the like hipster aesthetic. I don't really understand why we brought it back, because like it's not 2010 anymore. But regardless, there's this one band that has been doing music that got fairly noticed as part of the scene, and it's not very good. It's like rave, electro house type shit. Not great. It kind of evokes like a very poor man's like LCD sound system. Not very good. So that's my shitting on that scene. Just because it's got a lot of like press and stuff this year, but mostly bad. So people know that this shit is not interesting. Right. And then don't really have much else to say. I know we're going to get to a certain record.
Yeah, we're going to get to a certain. All right, I got 3 disappointments. I'll mention the 2 minor ones first, and then we'll get to the big one, which I already alluded to. So the 2 minor ones. Real quick, Conway put out some decent stuff. He put out a very good one, EP with Jay Skis, actually. So we can get to that in honorable mentions if you've heard that or not.
I didn't hear that. It was on my list. I didn't hear it, but I did hear good things about it.
It's good. Jay Skis is actually quite good in terms of, I don't even know if he's considered Griselda or not. He's on drum work. I did not listen to his album, but shout out to Young King Charles, has been talking a lot about that one. I do have it on my queue, so I will be getting to that soon. But yeah, the EP with them was like 20 minutes. I recommend it. Really good if you're into like that end of Griselda. But his studio album, Won't He Do It? Kind of wish he didn't do it. Yeah, like I've actually been a defender of the Conway studio album approach more so than the Benny one, at least. I'm still way more of a fan of the West Side approach because I think he's like weirder, more colorful. And we'll get to, I think, probably the best Griselda studio album since Pray for Haiti, I should say, or Pray for Paris for that matter, when we get to honorable mentions. But yeah, this was a miss. This was a miss for me. I think that he's trying, like, out of all the like guys who should be dulling their stuff for mainstream, I think Conway might be even less suited to it than Benny. Because I think with Benny, at least you can, I don't know, there might be like a jaded. I don't know. Benny's pretty boring Benny's just boring at doing it. Conway's awkward. Like Conway doing like 5-minute gospel type stuff. Like he's not even songs. And like the thing about it is Conway doing like soppy, overwrought stuff, but rapping the same way is such an ill fit. And it's just awkward and gawky. And like I don't even mind like some stuff like hit the like Juicy J Sauce Walka track. Like I didn't mind that, but it's awkward. It's weird to see him trying to do these things. And I don't understand why. Like I don't get like he's not going it's like a pair of shoes that doesn't fit and he's trying to walk in them.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with you in the sense that like when Conway first started doing that, like his one from a couple years ago, I was like, oh, this is actually still pretty good. Like he fits this okay. I like this better than the Benny record. But then it's kind of like, I just think that Westside picks the best beats for himself. So I'd rather listen to like a Westside record at this point, you know.
There's a weird, colorful energy to what Westside does, and I hate like you watch Always Sunny, right?
I've seen a little bit of it, but not very familiar, other than like the famous gags. But right. I don't know. Yeah.
Where they all go out to lunch, I guess, and Dennis is like there. I forget. There's like somebody outside of the gang who's with them, I think, and then Dennis starts ordering for everybody, and then she's like, "Why don't you guys order for yourselves?" And then Mac says, "Like, oh, Dennis orders for us. He has the most refined palate, so we trust him." I think they should all let Westside order for them, order their beats, sequence their albums. He has the most refined palate.
Right. Just don't post on social media for them too.
No, don't post pictures about with Marilyn Manson.
No. Hitler gifts for everyone. Oh shit! Wait.
Balenciaga draped in Balenciaga.
You're right. Exactly.
Speaking of people who shouldn't post on social media, man, you laid up that one for me. My other disappointment was Talib Kweli.
Yes. Good one. Yeah, good one.
This was a sequel to a free album that was pretty decent at the time, but it was just like a free album and it wasn't that special. So, and now it's a not free album on an app that a transphobe expects you to pay a bunch of money for. And it's an album full of him whining that people are yelling at him. That's a free album about him whining that people are mad at him on social media.
Yeah.
It's a waste of Madlib beats. Talib Kweli is a very unpleasant person. He gets washed by every single fucking guest on here. Charles, I'm sorry. I'm sorry your hero let us all down. Yeah. Stop posting, Talib. Just make Black Star albums. All these beats should have gone to Mos Def. The best track on here has 0 Talib Kweli on it. The second best track on here has mostly Westside Gun on it. It's an old song. Speaking of Westside Gun. I'd say it's a huge disappointment, but I kind of expected this wasn't going to be very good, but it's still managed to kind of disappoint me, and I haven't listened to it since. So, and since then, Talib's gotten kicked off of like every other social media platform. He's probably on Telegram right now fighting with Nazis, so I hope he feels good about himself. Speaking of people who shouldn't post on social media. All right, let's get to it. Killer Mike.
You know, Patrick. You know what I love? I love me some good CIA-approved hip hop. That's what I love.
Well, you know what the left really wants is just people to rap the Communist Manifesto to them. Apparently,
right. And apparently the left also wants Blade albums, which I fully support. Give me more Blade records. How dare someone say you support? How dare someone talk shit about Blade in a fucking Killer Mike comment box?
Man, it's okay. It's not a bad album. It really, truly isn't. But it could not be any more fucking mid. And I think there's something to be said about the fact that all the people who don't like it are bringing up, like, I don't know, lyrics, problems they have with hypocrisy. And all the people that do like it are just fucking bringing up Godwin's Law and ad hominem attacks. And this is what the left really wants. And just all shit.
Because the left really wants more, more landlords. That's what we want. I forgot.
I don't care that, I mean, okay, I do kind of care that Mike's a landlord because he's devoted the past 10 years of his career to yelling, kill your masters and kill cops, like burn couches and kill bankers and all this shit. And then he's bigging up himself as a landlord. Like, that seems just a smidge hypocritical, but I'm willing to make an escapist rap album. But putting your landlord flex on a weed song with Currency is just bad fucking writing and clumsy album sequencing.
And here's the thing, by the way, let's say Killer Mike is a landlord in real life. I mean, I don't know, but he's saying it on track, so I'm taking his word for it. In a vacuum, there are a lot worse things you can do in today's hyper-capitalist society than be like a half-decent landlord, assuming you're not, part of a mega property management corporation, and you treat your tenants with respect, you don't price gouge them, you maintain high quality of living in the building or house, whatever the fuck. But don't say it on the track, too. Like, why are you flexing about that shit? You're just being a half-decent person by fulfilling this artificially fake job that shouldn't exist.
Right. And again, I don't need to agree with you. You're a rapper. Like, let's bring up, Currency's on the track. I don't agree with Currency's because it's about women. Like, right. I don't, but he makes dope music and like songs where I don't have to agree with him. Like, I don't agree with your old Droog's views about fucking trans people. I kind of wish he'd stop bringing it up, but makes dope music. Killer Mike has a fucking homophobic line where he makes a Brokeback Mountain punchline in 2023. That's just hack comedy. That's just hack shit. Like, it's very he puts a, then correct me if I'm wrong, I only listened to the album once, there's a Dave Chappelle clip on the record, right? There sure is. That has that
right. And so it's very ironic that
It's just, there's stuff on, and you said the production's good. The production is good, but even the production feels hollow to me. Like, everything on here feels like it's invoking the best moments on rap music, which is 10 years ago, and it feels hollow to me. And much like the top, like Run on here feels like Go with all of the energy taken out of it. He makes Young Thug sound boring. Although, according to what you told me about the Young Thug album, Thug doesn't need any help. So
no, I wouldn't say the Thug album was boring, and like I said, I only listened to it once. It came out today for listeners that need context, the new Young Thug record. I would say that both the new Young Thug and the new Gunna have moments where the old versions of them shine through that I really like, but this their albums both feel a little watered down and very safe to me. They're not bad music, but I'm not going to be returning to them. With this album, you just talked about the production. I said that in the server, and shout out to Zach Hawes, who is the same username in RYM, and he mentioned that it's like baseline good, once again in a vacuum, but it feels very like artificial and contrived. It's like it's artificial. Like you can he talked about like you could put a nice gospel sample there, and it's like a cheat code because that's like, oh, of course it's gonna sound good, but the actual like production of the album is still very safe and gets bland after a while, I feel like. So he was right. I think that it's still very down the middle. So yeah.
I would agree. Like you said, what you mainly got out of it was good Currency feature, good 30 seconds of Future, and that's it. I would add, I think Ty Dolla is pretty good on it. But like Thug feels like he has no energy. I can't recall a less motivated Andre 3000 feature.
Yeah.
That for a second. You got Andre on here. This dude calls in literally every favor because I think he knows he ain't holding shit. Like, he waited 10 years and he's not really holding shit, except Brokeback Mountain punchlines and flexes about being a landlord. It's mid, and it's maybe he's doing that shit because he wants people to fight on the internet for artificial fucking buzz. Charles was right. Nobody talked about that single 9 months ago because it sank like a fucking stone. So
it's true. And in the like, it kind of reminds me of, you talked about, he doesn't have it. We kind of had a similar conversation about the Jay Elec record, the one he did with Jay-Z. The difference was he got Jay-Z's best rapping, 444 aside, in almost 20 years on that album. So there was a reason to talk about it positively. There's no reason to talk about this positively.
Right. I mean, I feel like maybe the epitaph for Run the Jewels is Walking in the Snow. Like, that's it. Like, because I have zero interest in RTJ5 at this point. Like,
no.
Dead. So,
well, Walking in the Snow was 100%. That's like the last song they've made that I remember.
All right. Well, enough negativity. Let's get to anything this year that surprised you, and then we'll start getting into the really good shit.
Positives. I love positivity. Let's see. What surprised me? Well, I was happy to see. I don't know if you listened to Pierre drop that Grails EP a few months back. I was happy to see that because remember he was rebounding off of that. I think last year was the Juicy, NFT stuff, right? Or was that?
That was your Space Age Pimpin'.
Space Age Pimpin' was last year too, yeah. And then he had that collab tape with Fraser Trill, which was not as successful as the first one, not even close. So I like the fact that he was able to bounce back, and he put this out, and a lot of these are songs that, or most of them are songs that had been asked for like previously. It's like IG has been out for like in a snippet form for like 6 years, but it finally came out. Honeyberry 2 is also amazing. Like, I really think that this was like a wonderful little EP for the summer, and so I was into it.
I have it. I was kind of sitting on it because I think I thought I had these songs previously, so I'm like, maybe they're just remasters, but like I guess they're like expanded, so I will give it a more thorough listen because I guess I had snippet versions previously. As far as surprises,
I'm not exactly sure. I cut you off again. I'm sorry. I'm not exactly sure about all of them because I'll be honest, I didn't know all of them. I knew about like half of them before listening, but I think that they were out in like snippet format or like lower quality format. So yeah,
I definitely Berry 2 before, but I was like in like 128 or something, and it was not very good. So
right. Yeah.
As far as what I've written down for surprises here, I had 90s or like early like 90s/2000 rock bands that actually put out good shit. In terms of the Queens of the Stone Age album is quite good. I don't know if you're a fan of theirs or not, but I actually really enjoyed their album. I cannot speak to the one before this, which got a very, let's say, mixed reaction, so I avoided it, the one with the Mark Ronson production. But this one's very good. I really like the guitar tone on it. John Theodore's drumming, very nice driven rock, just good rock music. I haven't listened to the Foo Fighters album, but RYM shitting itself over it. Has the 10-minute single on it. Really like the Melvins album. I only listened to it once, but I meant to revisit it. As far as rock goes, I don't know if you want to consider them rock or pop. And I think it's definitely charting on RYM, so I got a good reaction. I know you'll have something to say about this one. And it probably actually belongs in, I don't even know if this qualifies as a surprise, although with her solo work getting such a mixed reaction, maybe it does, although I liked all of the solo stuff. Paramore album, I thought was excellent. And I finally got to it yesterday, bumped it in the car, and I like everything about it. I liked the singles before. I don't know why it took me so long to get to it. Probably because I think the cover art sucks. But other than that, I like the idea of the cover art, but I think maybe because of the font, I think is really, but, and the cover art does fit a lot of the lyrical themes, but I could see myself spinning this all year. It might even end up on my year end if I spin it as much as I think I'm going to, but I think it's a really great articulation of what a lot of people are feeling in this day and age. I think Haley's a really great lyricist. There are tons of hooks on it. It's fans feel about it necessarily in terms of their previous work. And you know me, I was a late comer to Paramore. So, but
well, I don't know too much. I wouldn't say I know too much for the fan reaction, but a close friend of mine is a really big Paramore fan. Like I would say, post the self-titled. So, and he's gone back and likes the other stuff now too. But I think we were just talking when the album came out, and our conclusion was like, yeah, like really good Paramore record, like, you know, more news at 11. Like I wouldn't say that it's one of their best. I would still put it, I don't know, if I had to like, you know, rank the Paramore records. I don't have the whole discog in front of me, but I don't think it's as good as After Laughter or the self-titled. But I do think that it's still a really good record. It kind of is on that like Brand New Eyes, like Riot corner for me, where it's really good, has some great standouts. Haley's cooking like she always is. I like the fact that it has a different feel to it. It has that like dance punk, you know, kind of like post-punk-ish vibes, versus their last few were more of a, you know, you had like After Laughter had that like new wave and, you know, dancey stuff, and the self-titled was more like, you know, just power rock and pop rock, like, you know, those kind of longer ballads, and then, you know, the pop punk stuff before that. So I like the fact that this was more, it felt a little bit more like mature is the wrong word, because they were always like mature in the songwriting, but it felt a little older, you know. There was a wisdom to it, I think, and a kind of an edge to it again, that you feel like they needed a lot of that time off for them to come back with this, because there's a little bit of like, you know, outside of the like introspection on it and like that usual, you know, kiss off energy, there's some real like bittersweet stuff to it that I thought was very interesting.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because getting back to the recurring theme of the episode, I remember there was something in one of the singles comment boxes where they were like, oh, this could just be a bunch of like millennial memes. Like there should be a song about will we prefer animals to people or something. Because I'm like, I don't know. Have you been living in the fucking world in the past 3 years of like a pandemic and, you know, just everything? Because I feel they do a very good job of articulating lyrically and getting that tension across in the songwriting and everything. I don't know. It's off one listen, but I think, and again, I'm no Paramore expert. I mainly know After Laughter, and Future is my favorite song of theirs, but this actually inspired me. Future is an incredible song. Future and Hard Times are my two songs of theirs, but there are songs on here, like I found myself singing along to the hooks immediately. So that's how I know it's a fucking winner.
It comes out of the gates with like I think some of the best songs on it, so that also helps. You know, if you haven't listened to it yet, you know, give those songs a listen.
I would say it's really well sequenced in terms of coming out the gate strong, but it doesn't really flag in momentum necessarily. I have two rap albums, hip hop albums, whatever the fuck, on my surprise list. You probably haven't heard either of them. They don't really seem up your alley. One was a huge surprise because this dude does very inconsistent old rapper who often puts out junk. Kool Keith and somebody who doesn't really put out junk, Real Bad Man, Serpent. Really surprised this was good, because not accustomed to late period Kool Keith projects being very good. This is front to back very, very good. Good, solid effort out of Keith. Like if you you just need to get past the fact that he's not going to flow like he's doing anything other than talking for the most part, but full effort. Real Bad Man, been on a huge roll. We'll get to him later too. He has something else that was excellent this year. Ice-T just showing up on rap albums lately. That's must be getting really bored given how bad Special Victims has been these days. And Champagne for Breakfast, Madlib, Mayhem Loren, and DJ Muggs. Madlib, much better use of his instrumentals than Talib. Muggs, we'll get to him again when I get to my beat tape lightning round. Really good performance out of him on here as well. Structuring is kind of weird. It's like half Muggs and then half Madlib. This is kind of a spiritual sequel to the Madlib Percy P album, Perseverance, in that you just have a guy who's just going to battle rap at you no matter what you give to him. But in terms of that, this is the most exciting stuff Loren's done since in about a decade. Speaking of decade anniversaries, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Mishka NYC wave of like 2012. You might be, because that's like when Harry Fraud started breaking out, and Fraud did some stuff with Loren. That was like,
vaguely familiar, but not like super.
Yeah, like, actions were kind of tangentially involved in that. Bronson was big into that, obviously, with Loren too. Right. But yeah, like Mandatory Brunch Meetings, which is a hilarious title, by the way, was his big tape around then. This is kind of a callback to that. It's definitely a certain style of rapping, but these are instrumentals of a higher quality than he's had anything since he was working with Fraud. So highly recommend it if you don't even really need to like this style of rap so much. Like, well, you can like the style of rap or you can like the style of instrumentals. It'll meet you in the middle. Hologram is one of my least favorite rappers alive, and he still even sounds good over this. There's not a track I would miss off this. Highly recommend it. So, and if you like food references, tons of food references, even more than an album. So, the only thing I would say is there's no big body cameo, and that's one thing.
Oh man,
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
So, but I was not expecting Mayhem Loren in 2023 to come out with a project I would even mention on this podcast, let alone one with two of the most legendary producers out there. So, definitely a surprise.
Yeah, shout out to that. I will give that one a listen because you used a bunch of words that
I used a bunch of words. I tend to do
well,
that.
Yes, you did use a bunch of words, but you used some words that caught my fancy. So I actually will give that one a listen. Let me see. I don't know. A lot of the things I listened to this year that I liked, I kind of knew ahead of time that I probably would like. I think just some stuff that caught me by surprise and that I think stuff like, for example, like the Rodeoglo had an EP this year, Blood Rave, which kind of fused like tread with like old school tread with like, basically like, very, very dark trap and like sigilcore, I guess you would call it stuff.
I don't know what that last thing is, although you guys talk about it in the server all the time, so I might check that one out.
Rodeoglo has been consistent and is like one of the only few artists that, I mean, I don't even know, like from, I would say 4 years ago when that stuff started bubbling in, the deep underbelly of SoundCloud, that has managed to like do a bunch of different stuff with his sound and then still come back and make like cool shit. So in the stuff that he originally blew up on. So good for good for him and a great record. I might even be underrating it because I listened to it a few times. So, but it's only 4 songs, like most of these things are. So.
I will say I was super surprised by that last thing you sent me, the RealYungPhil, but I don't know if you want to talk about that later, so we can get to that if you're going to actually.
Oh, I mean that's up there in terms of it's not my favorite, but so if you want to do it now, we could do it now because you hadn't the artist. So
that's one of those y'all like constant recurring theme in the server. You guys talk about something all the time, like it's a dumb name, and I don't fucking listen to it. But then you mentioned it, and I'm like, oh wow, Young Armor, good, okay, Drain producers, and it's like 20 minutes long, and I got to most of it. Victory Music, I believe it's called. Yeah, really fucking good. Some of the rapping, some of the rapping,
go ahead.
Effort sometimes, but still like never not entertaining. I mean, shit, I've listened to more Capadon albums than I can count, as we will get to in a few weeks when we get to Wu-Tang Part 2. So I'm used to low-effort rapping over good beats, and sometimes terrible beats, as we'll get to when we listen to Wu-Tang Part 2. But, yeah, that was fantastic. Like, I thought, like, yeah, you were not kidding when you were saying main attractions type vibes on that. And a lot of the rap... I don't short sell his rapping. It's just like around the end, it seems like some of the punchlines were just a little bit more lethargic than at the beginning. But even then, he was never not entertaining over it. And I will always take White Armor and good production. So
yeah, and not to this might sound like I'm just totally correcting you. No White Armor beats on here, as far as I know. Another frequent Drain collaborator like Wosum is the other producer on here.
You said it was White Armor and good were the 3. I thought you White Armor.
Hey, look, it might. Let's check the hard drives. What did I tell you?
Said that.
I said. What did I say? As I find it. Young Sherman is the other one.
Okay,
yes. Who also, former of DG fame.
My Drain brain went to there you go.
No, you were right. You were just it was a different drainer.
I was in the same drain, but not the right pipe. But
right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, RealYungPhil is an artist that I have brought up before on the pod and mid-year and end of year stuff, just because he had produced tapes going back to 2021 that I had really liked. And had Plugg before, stuff like Phil Vinci and Dr. Phil Vinci when he was doing collabs with the Plugg producer Dil Vinci. He also had the tape with Evil Gianni. He had done plenty of Surf Gang stuff and features and whatnot because he's kind of in that extended list of collaborators that will do stuff with Surf Gang. So I had been a fan. I really like his. You had talked about it was like, it can be like there's a lethargic nature to it. I really like the fact that it's like very matter of fact, and he has a very commanding voice and presence that can fit over. You know, he's done a lot of like traditional plug and sample drill stuff, so a lot of that stuff is more. It has like a weightlessness to it. So I think that over these beats, while some of them are more propulsive, he sounds great over those, and he sounds great over ones like Talk of the Town, which not only is like a really cool like motivational type song, but it has like a very lazy river kind of feel. And it sounds great as this like cloud rap mixed with like some plug tinges, like where you get that Main Attractions blog rap feel. I think a lot of the songs on here evoke stuff like Leaf or, you know, even stuff like Church. I would say Opening Doors evokes Church a little bit. So yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorites of the year. I would probably put it. I put together a topster like I always do, but I put it in the like, you know, in the vicinity between 4 and 9, you know, it's 4 and 10, something like that. Of definitely one of my favorites. I've listened to it a lot. It was one that I knew was going to be great because the single for it came out like a year ago. I just think it's really cool that he sounded this great over these beats, and these beats were able to. Comment box again, excuse the mention, but the comment box was comparing it to Foreign Exchange, the RX Poppy and Good collab. Stop fucking doing that. They sound nothing alike. They're going for something completely different in my opinion. This really feels like a callback to blog rap, early 2010s cloud rap. It's a very like, it has a warmth and a familiarity to it, and like I already said, like a motivational aspect to it that I would get from Main Attractions, from Lil B. So yeah, I mean, you know, nothing like revolutionary about the lyrics, but there is some you know, personal and introspective moments as well, you know, sprinkled in the 20-minute runtime. So yeah, I can't say enough good things. I'm glad you liked it a lot, and yeah.
It was a very, very under the wire listen, like literally 20 minutes before airtime, more or less. You threw that at me, and I will be giving it more listens. I think you nailed, like, you know, my taste. That, like, again, I was just talking about the Mishka stuff. Main Attractions were part of the Mishka scene. Bizarre that, like, they were like a fashion label in the early 2010s, like literally fashion. And they started putting out these mixtapes, and like Underachievers, Main Attractions, Broad, Bronson, Mayhem Loren, like all this cloud rap stuff. I think you mentioned Lil B. I don't know. Are we going to talk about I mean, I missed that. Like that, I was really like.
No, I haven't. You know, I actually haven't heard it. That's well, that's not true. I heard some of it. I heard some of it, but I never rated it.
Yeah, I can really talk about it. But what I've heard, the single, like I heard Mosh Pit, which I think is, I don't know if it's good or just funny, but I think it's good. I find it entertaining, at least. I mean, I trust the people in the server who say it's good. I haven't had the time to devote to it, unfortunately, but I trust that it's good, and hopefully by the year end, I will have the time to listen to it. At which point, I'll probably put out like a 5-hour one. But my point being, I miss that scene, and this seems like it really scratches that itch. And you're right about him having the gravity to go over this sort of stuff, the authority to command it. So when I said lethargic, I wasn't trying to say that as like a diss, like, because it feels like that's the exact sort of vibe you need to have for this, I think.
To me, it's more commendable in my view that he has the capability to sound great over, you know, sample drill beats, like stuff the Surf Gang was usually associated with, that New York sample drill scene. And then the plug stuff, the traditional plug stuff that's very like summery, very, you know, hazy and weightless. And then he can go over this stuff, which, you know, as we have said, evokes a lot of Main Attractions, has a bit of a chill to it. I feel like this will be a great fall album. So, yeah.
All right. Let's move on.
Keep going through good shit. I guess on this topic, we have to talk about, now you haven't heard the full album, but the RX Nephew, the RX Nephew.
Well, I need to okay. So this was apparently #1 on RYM for a day, and then people who would have never listened to Neff listened to Neff.
It is worthy. It is worthy of that number one title.
Oh, no,
it's so good.
I can tell just from listening to. So I listened to one song off this, Critical, which it made my fucking day. I'm so happy I listened to this song. It was beautiful. It was so full of energy. He walked in like 100 things, and he drove his car that didn't have a license, and it was. Yeah, I really need to get to this album. I don't know what else. I don't think I've listened to a single Neff project this year, actually. It's unfortunately, which has made probably why I felt like it's been lacking in joy. But I've heard all the people whose opinions I trust have said this is one of his best projects. And
for sure.
If they're all like critical, I mean, is this the best song on there?
I think it is. It's my favorite song on there, and I think it's one of my favorite songs of the year, so I'm a little like biased, but there are other hilarious songs with great beats and, great Neff performances on there, like littered throughout the album. It's so consistent. It's very, 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 very funny, and like the charisma is next level. And on the topic of Neff, two things. One, the amount of times this year that I've literally walked into this bitch, but I've walked around. I've walked around and I've just been under my breath like, walking this bitch, get critical. Dance moves hitting harder than Ike Turner. it's just so funny, and I can't get over how good that song is, because it is really one of the best things he's ever made. But that song is also that song kind of blew up because people were doing a funny a dance to it on TikTok where they were kind of like they were literally like walking into this bitch. Seriously, it was like exaggerated walking into this bitch. So I thought it was actually a rare W. I actually thought it was creative and fun. So good for Neff for getting that notoriety. Also, shout out to Neff for getting Rihanna to play one of his songs on IG or whatever. That was fun. So good for Neff, making some moves.
Up the W's, I love to see it. What I thought when I listened to that, we can transition briefly because we already talked about this for quite a while. When I listened to that was, I really wish that Neff did the collab album with Danny as opposed to JPEG.
Oh, that's a dream collab.
That is the dream, because I was just like, that is so much more the energy.
Can you imagine a Neff,
I really like
and Danny collab?
I listened to it more. Since actually, I have I had the Peggy Danny album. And I'm not going to continue saying the name of that album because it embarrasses me to say the fucking name of the album over. I had that on a Bourne CD with what my favorite album is, and I'm not going to spoil it. Although listeners of the podcast can probably guess what the album would be.
At this point, yeah.
At this point, you can't guess. You can't listen to the podcast.
Yeah, I agree.
Say that the Peggy Danny album does hold up. It sounds even better in the car. It really does play well in the car, honestly. As much as sometimes you don't want... Actually, where I live, I don't care if these fucking people hear what they're screaming about. It's actually kind of funny to hear Peggy screaming this shit out, and sometimes you get a look, whatever. Because mostly you can only hear Peggy, but you can't really hear... Which is weird to not be able to hear Danny Brown when he's screaming on an album. But those beats actually do sound really good coming out of car speakers. Go listen to the Scaring the Hose Under Ocean Boulevard episode if you really want to hear it, because my opinions haven't changed too much on it. Maybe they've gone up a little bit. Shout out to Aaron, who finally listened to the album, got over the Mach-Hommy line eventually, and he didn't like it. He had incredibly low expectations, and it exceeded them. He will never listen to it again. He
at least
found out that it was all made on an MPC and had to listen to it, and he was like, well, this beat's weird. Well, this beat's weird. That was a cool wrestling reference. I wish Peggy would shut up. Why can't I hear Danny? That was a cool wrestling reference. Why won't Peggy shut up? I can't hear Danny. That was better than I thought it was going to be. I'm never going to listen to it again. There. That was what I had to hear yesterday as he listened to the album. So, but yeah, I really wish we would get that Neff Danny album sometime, and I hope we get Quanta this year.
Yeah. And on the topic of Neff, before we move on, just because, Neff had, I would say 5 just terrific projects so far this year, and you're like, well, 5 that's amazing, isn't it? But the thing about Neff is the thing about Neff is he puts out so much work. So last year, I don't want to say he fell off, but I was a little more lukewarm on most of Neff's output last year compared to 2020 and 2021, especially 2021 when he was just putting out a great project seemingly every week. It was like the level of consistency that he sustained was unsustainable. So then last year he kind of had like a dip, and I wasn't really as hot on a lot of the stuff. Not that it was bad in the slightest, but it just wasn't hitting for me the same. And this year he is absolutely cooking. He's scorching hot right now for the most part. So he, I don't know if he heard the chatter or he had newfound inspiration, but I think on like that album that has Critical on it, Til I'm Dead, and also like Ready to Ball, and which is like a lot of brainstorm beats, and what do you call it? The Shardy, like RXK 2-3, the third in that trilogy, which is like a Plugg and B tape. There are 3 very different sounding albums, but they all tie the best of what makes Neff great together. So yeah, big fan of what Neff's done this year, and glad that he's not only returned to form, but has really risen to making some of the best rap music of the year.
Yeah, Pro Neff podcast. Neff episode is going to be like 10 hours long when we get to it eventually. But
and also on just since we just talked about Neff, RX Poppy, Dogstorm, the Brainstorm collaboration, great tape, nice return for RX Poppy as well. So
yeah, haven't heard it. I'm so behind. I'm behind on Neff. My rapper you haven't really listened to in the same way that I've been listening to Neff. I'm actually behind on Vic Spencer. I know the Green Thumbs project was very good. I have not listened to his other 2 this year, so I'm very behind on Vic, but hopefully by the year end I will get to the other 2 Vic projects. I will say the If George Bush Was Cool project has multiple hilarious covers to it and a hilarious concept. Kind of the same thing as Smoke DZA's George Cush the Button. One of the vinyl cover art on that is George Bush dodging the shoe that was thrown at him, which I think is fucking hysterical. So
that is very funny.
So
that's a good one. What else did I want to shout out? I will say that in terms of like an artist that, speaking of artists that get plugged in the server a lot, and artists that we've been, people in the server have been, big fans of for, the last couple years or so. I mean, I really think that like XavierSobased is having like a really crazy run. The fact that he's really making like inventive music at, the age of like 20 or whatever, it's just so crazy to me because he was making music that sounded way different than this years ago when Destroy Me, aka 108 Mics, or shout out to Chris, put me on to him. He was part of a crew that was a lot smaller, and now he makes music in like the Milwaukee bounce scene, which kind of has a jerk rap. It kind of pulls from like New Orleans and California stuff. But yeah, I mean, really good projects from him this year, and definitely an artist that I feel like I'm gonna be following for a while because every year he just puts out different shit. But Patch Made blew up, which I know you've heard. I
was about to say I'm going to impress you that I listened to one of his projects and I enjoyed it.
The install one, right?
Right. And I was going to say that we should probably do a Milwaukee episode. And I was about to say that I will impress everybody again and listen to stuff that young people make. And then you said jerk. And I'm like, will I? I don't know. Will I? It's
well, here's the thing is the stuff that XavierSobased makes, I think, is a little different from some of the other Milwaukee stuff because he's pulling from a lot of different styles versus some of the other Milwaukee stuff. It's more in like the bounce lane, like the New Orleans, pseudo New Orleans, like bounce lane. People like Ayo Lee, I believe that's how I pronounce it, who is an artist that shout out to that random guy though. That random guy though put me on to him last year, and other people in the server was a big fan. So thanks for doing that as always. I forget what his name is now in RYM because he changed it, but shout out to him. So yeah,
shout out on the server who make music, such as Celestiphone, who is still in the RYM top.
True.
With a paper cut from the Obit, which has absolutely sick cover art and an absolutely sick guest list with rappers such as Def C, R.A.P. Ferreira, who I'll get to later in the list, Arm & Hammer, who you've probably heard of, More Mother, and MC Paul Barman. His best album, I would say, for a new listener, it's some people complain about his rapping. Those people are soft, and then you shut the fuck up in comment boxes. But even those people admit that this is his best rapping. It's just a really creative, fun, colorful album full of funny ass punchlines. Don't fucking call it drumless though. He tells you on the album, don't call that shit drumless. It's a real, like, as somebody who enjoys the sort of recent wave of like Alchemist, Mike sort of, although Alchemist makes it like varied sort of style, like more, I would guess, morose, jazzy sort of stuff. This is a different kind of jazzy. Like, people called it Zappa rap, and I think that's a good explanation of it. It's high BPM. He compares it to like mid-90s Bay Area sort of style. I think that's a good way to describe it. The punchlines are hilarious. Like, there's like the track titles say it all, like Effort Latrine, Neat Daughter, Gravid Patch, just off the wall fucking punchlines. Really good in the pocket rapping. Like, I consider it good. Like, I think people sometimes can't get over his like high pitched voice sometimes, but if you pay attention to what he's saying, shit's funny. Punchlines are clever, and you don't have to pay attention to what he's saying because the way he mixes his voice. I think he listens to the criticisms and responds accordingly. And honestly, he also stacks the guest list with, you know, Def C, Rap Ferreira, Arm & Hammer, War Mother. So there are ringers in here if you don't like the way he's rapping for some weird reason. And Babies with Paul Barman is like, I mean, it hits me where I live in terms of what he's rapping about and the place I am at in my life. So I have a personal attachment to that song. It's kind of a piece with something I'll talk about in my favorite album of the year, and one of the tracks on there too. So I really, really enjoy this album. It's one of my favorites of the year. It's been kind of difficult for me to actually talk about it in a review because, like, first of all, I see the guy in the server every day and I don't want to embarrass myself. But it's really good shit. I'm glad that it's getting so much attention. It's been really cool to see Celeste evolve as an artist. Everything he's made has been great. His instrumental project's been great. I hope he puts out an instrumental of this, but I don't think that he deserved any of the shit he got as a rapper. And I think that he's evolved, like, I don't know, I keep saying he's evolved as an artist as if he wasn't a good one, but like, this is definitely his most funny lyrically and I don't want to say evolved again, expansive instrumentally. So if for some reason you haven't checked it out, I feel like a lot of the people who'd be listening to this already have. Check it out. So
yeah, no, I liked it a lot. I've heard it like a month or so ago. I forgot to rate it apparently, but no, I remember liking it a lot. And this was actually the first, or embarrassing of me as someone who literally runs the server, but I think it was like the first Celestephone release in full. So now I have homework that I'm welcoming with open arms to go back and listen to more Celestephone because I liked it a lot. So nothing but positives on my end.
I'm sorry to like step on you there, but it gave me a little bit of perspective on he said that he tying up loose friends. He actually makes reference to this in the lyrics with something like he said, I released that without the context. I just kind of thought there were a lot of non sequiturs on that album lyrically, and now it kind of inspires me to go back and revisit that because I just thought there were like a lot of things that were just funny on there, and now I kind of want to, because I actually liked the rapping on that, and I think he kind of took some criticisms of that a little personally, and now maybe it's actually different than I thought. So I think that's a credit to his rapping. So
yeah,
but,
no,
like yeah, like I'm always somebody who's like, if you don't like the rapping on something, just take it as a fucking instrument. He's incredibly in pocket on this. So
yeah, no, I think it's a dope record. I'm trying to think of other things. Did you want to talk about the Zelooperz?
I did not, because I only heard it once, and I feel like that's speaking of people who, excuse me, use their voice as an instrument. This is his most rap album, I think, and like because it's Microphone Fiend. Like he's really like spitting on this one, and I can't really cite bars on it, unfortunately, but it's great. It's fucking good, and I didn't get a chance to revisit it, but it's great. Like I don't think it's, and I think he kind of released it close to the Danny album, which I thought was really canny because people are going to be looking for more Bruiser shit. I want to talk about it more on the year end, but yeah, if you like Zelooperz, if you like Danny for that matter, check that.
You're gonna like this. Yeah. You're gonna like this. I think it actually went a little bit under the radar by RYM standards, considering like Zelooperz just like his last record went stupid on RYM. So I don't know what the holdup was because it was pretty accessible in my view.
not the R&B. Well, I think his last one was actually the R&B one. That didn't go stupid. The one before that.
Yeah, sorry, the one before the Van Gogh one.
Van Gogh's here, yeah, which was fucking nuts. And I actually have been sitting on a review of that for a long time because that's like a 9. And I don't know, Zelooperz has a crazy discography. He like never made a bad out. Like Zelooperz is like fucking alternate universe Danny Brown. Like, actually.
Yeah, Zelooperz definitely was an artist that I liked, but then when the Van Gogh project came out, I really I went from like to love with him. So I definitely, since that project, I've been some of the other previous ones before that I liked, like Dynamite and
yeah, Dynamite's really cool. And then the Jay-Z one or whatever. It's I'm getting the name of that wrong, but you know which one I'm talking about. It's like
yep.
Yeah. But then he had the one between Van Gogh and that one, which is like him doing R&B stuff. I think that's the first
R&B stuff.
Yeah. He's like singing on that one, and that one I also need to revisit. It's like, because I don't think I properly appreciate that, but he is so stylistically versatile. But yeah, Microphone Fiend is really cool, but I think I really didn't want to talk about it just because I think he goes out, like, again, based on the title, really to rap on it. And for something like that, much like the favorite of the year, I kind of want to be able to cite things, and I'm probably going to be pathetically articulate when I talk about that album. I also didn't want to disrespect Zelooperz like that. But yeah, definitely check that one out.
Yeah, no, definitely worth checking out. I want to also bring up there was a Wi-Fi God tape that came out this year with a another artist who Sudiere. Yeah, he's a French artist. And it's actually an artist that had done a lot of work that I hadn't heard, had very few familiar with. I did some DJ Smokey stuff. I hadn't heard their stuff either, but they had a tape. And I thought it was hard as shit, and I was late to it, and all my mutual friends on the site rated it highly, and they were not wrong, because it's really good, and it's some of the most like impassioned rapping that Wi-Fi God has done, I think, in a minute. I mean, I liked his albums last year because I like most Wi-Fi God albums, but I think this is like.
I was doing my great revision thing that I've been doing recently, where I go through like everything from my unrated. So I'm just trying to completely clean up my profile and stuff. Mm-hmm. One thing I noticed, he did a collab with Buckcherry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was weird. Just throwing that out there. Why? Bye.
Yeah. All right. I'll give you that.
I know. I'm just let me have that one and just move on.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And I know that Wi-Fi God did another. He did a collab tape called Block Music, which came out very, very recently. Haven't heard it, but I'm sure it's good because like I said, most of the stuff is good. I just thought that this particular tape was great in a way that he hadn't really had a great project in like a couple of years, like 2020 and 2021-ish. So really, really happy with that one. So just wanted to plug it here. His best project will still always be Trenches to Riches to me. Shout out to Working on Dying, shout out to DJ Smokey, but also the High C collab tape from like 3 years ago was also excellent. But in terms of Wi-Fi God, Return to Form, one of his better projects in a while. Just great stuff. And very short, like 8 tracks.
Somebody who has put out a lot of work this year, and you might want to check it, is the God Fahim.
Check it.
I have to actually look up his page, but I believe he's put out no less.
It's gonna be like 8 albums.
I think it might be 10. I don't know. Once I look up his most recent project, the Legends Who Will Never Die will have the count in the description. So
100%, he's already got it lined up.
So I have to look that up. But the best of them is obviously the Mach collab, Notorious Legends 2. But even his solo stuff has been very good this year. He's really actually stepped it up. I haven't even rated Luxury Art with RU $H or Rhyme Pays. Or this is a baffling title, by the way. Dump God hyphen the knock. Dump God. The Knocking of Loose. What? The Knocking of Loose. That makes no sense. But yeah, so we have Notorious Dump Legends Volume 2, which I have at a 9, is absolutely fantastic with Mach. Mach has something coming out soon. Don't ask any questions about it. You will get DMCA'd. But But it's going to have Black Thought on it. Might have Jay-Z on it. There was apparently a poll at the listening party whether or not you will have Fahim or Rock Marciano on it, which is a funny poll to have.
Yeah.
Two very divisive artists. But he also has what else? The Chess Moves album was pretty good. I actually have to expand to see what else he put out this year. God, this man has so many fucking albums. Iron Bull with terrible cover art was very good. Looks like a fucking Atari Jaguar game. Just okay. So I have to find the most recent thing he put out to Gold Chains and Therapy. What? Oh, that's an appearance. Great radio
it's just
here.
A laundry list of God Fahim solo stuff. You got to be a real diehard.
Put out
to
at least
this.
10 things. Fahim, he said, like, as he said on Twitter, I am on a legendary roll. Because he is on Twitter, unlike Mach-Hommy, who on the best thing, one of the best hooks I've heard this year is my Twitter pop, and I ain't even got Twitter. And then Fahim picks it up and says, my Twitter ain't popping. What's up? You ain't checking for a... Which is so funny. It's like, yeah, that's on Dump God Reloaded, which is also great. Yeah. It's the track Butter Levers, which is hilarious, which that's maybe his second best project too. So you could make a top 10 of just God Fahim projects this year. So yeah, Fahim's been on a great roll. I think he's made a genuine effort to improve his rapping over the past couple of years. So I think for a while it was a little bit of a joke that he was like Mach's sidekick. I think he's really improved past that. And I truly think in the same way that we did the world a disservice by invoking Vanessa again, kind of did the opposite in that I started making fun of Fahim for checking it. He has not checked it in the past year.
Now I kind of want him to check it.
I do. Though. I want him to check it just once. Just once check it.
Just once.
And also his weird syntax too. He has the fucking one title, The Knocking of Loose, and on Dump God Reloaded, the last track is called The Forwarding of Payment. Like I do not understand the way this man writes. So, but yeah, Fahim on fire lately. Mach has an album coming out soon, and I don't want to talk about Droog because he might diss me on a song.
Yeah, we don't need that. I guess, you know what, it kind of ties into, I wouldn't call it a surprise, it was just an artist that I was only vaguely familiar with because they were so new. The artist Jim Legacy, who, and once again, I'm going to preface that by saying, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, had an album this year, Homeless Pop Music. There's another word in there, not going to say what that is. But he was an artist that I discovered last year because the song DJ came out toward the end of the year, and it was a stylistic mashup of a few things that I hadn't really heard before. It was like, you know, like an alt R&B mixed with like a garage type, house type beat with like UK drill high, like not quite hi-hats, but like a UK drill element to it too. And it turned out to be one of the best songs of the year, one of the best pop songs. Very cool fusion. And he dropped an album this year, and it turned out to be, that album was like a great synthesis and full-length statement of those fusions. The genres on this album definitely range from, like, you know, UK hip-hop and pop rap stuff and alt R&B, and there's like Afrobeat influence, and there's, you know, garage and house influences, and, you know, some drill influences, and even like emo influences, some guitars on here, plenty of guitars. So you would think that's a little scattershot, it's a little over the place, but not really. It coalesces very well into great pop music. And it ended up being like, you know, in my mid-year top 10. And it just sounds like this is music that is very hard to replicate. And the user Cal50 on RYM talked about that in their review, where it's drawing on a lot of different like cultural touchstones and already established genres, but the way he blends it together and pulls it off is pretty unique and pretty artistic. And the song Miley's Rhythm, which has it has a Miley Cyrus sample, and it's used incredibly. And I also want to say that Your Marge's Crib there's a Rihanna song from about 10 years ago called Stay, which is a collab with this guy named Mickey Echo, who was part of a band at the time, and irrelevant. Nobody went on to hear from Mickey Echo ever again. But the collab was like this, like kind of not maudlin, but a little drab, like singer-songwriter type tune, and it was very, very popular when I was like in early high school, and that's how I remembered it. So when that sample comes in, it's very vague and in the background of Rihanna on the hook of that song, I was like, where do I know that? And I knew it from that song, and the way that is one of my favorite songs of the year, and how it uses a sample from a song that I previously couldn't care less about, I find that so impressive. So shout out to Jim Legacy, shout out to all the producers on here. Very, very unique and very cool project. I think that if you like songs by, gosh, I don't even know how to pitch it, but I think it has like a sort of similar swing to a lot of genre mismatches. So if you're not afraid to, dabble in some like genre mismatch, stuff, then I would definitely check it out. But yeah, homeless pop music, Jim Legacy, great record, and number 7 on the mixtape charts for this year. Good shit, RYM. Let's not ruin that.
Credit where credit is deserved. RYM on that's actually gonna make me bring up the mixtape charts in a minute. But I will give shout out to Cal 20, by the way, or Cal 50. I forget which number he has, but he's a mutual, and he often has good takes on stuff. Sometimes can be a bit harsh on things. Sometimes I'll bring up something I like and he'll like shit all over it. But he often has, like really good takes on stuff. And,
yeah.
So yeah, I like him. We should get him in the server actually. Good dude.
100%. Yeah, I really enjoy reading his reviews. So there, some positivity on the podcast. God damn it.
Generally try and be positive more often than not. So just flipping through my stuff here just to come up with, before we get to the real heavy hitters, just looking through my reviews. Boldy James, I'm going to get to the Griselda section here, had 2 releases this year. I said we get back to Real Bad Man. He had one beginning of the year with Boldy, Ado, which was one of those rare art things that took forever to hit the internet. Boldy, the 2 I've heard, he had something called Indiana Jones. Shout out to Wyatt, the Indiana Jones of the internet, saving all of it, lost to time.
Yeah.
I've not listened to Indiana Jones by Boldy, but I listened to these 2 shorter releases. Boldy and Real Bad Man Ado is a really great little EP. But the one that I heard more recently was Prisoner of Circumstance. And I know that most people really rate Manger on McNichols as Boldy's defining statement. And I think this is the closest thing he's done to Manger in terms of like personal stuff over jazz rap beats. Whereas I would say that I don't know if it's a do or ADU, it's like all caps ADU, is a little bit closer to what Boldy did with Nicholas Craven in terms of like jankier, I guess, more like left field type battle rap sort of things. Either way, both Boldy remarkably consistent. We've talked about his conversational flow before on the show, and just never misses for me.
Yeah, we love Boldy. We're very pro Boldy on the show.
Right, and yeah, he's consistent and also prolific, and yeah, I feel like on the end of the year he's probably going to show up in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, but if you like me, would say that Prisoner of Circumstance is the one to go to. Whereas if you like a little bit more experimental Ado and or ADU, I don't know what the proper pronunciation would be the thing to go to. And I know Real Bad Man is very highly thought of, given he did the Pink Sifu collab last year, Real Bad Flights. So that would be something to check for on that. But the most exciting Griselda thing I've heard this year thus far would be Nack Saw with Estee Nack, which was put together by Westside Gun. I kind of alluded to that before. And I think he's the most recent Griselda signing. He's kind of floated around their periphery for a while. He's like Al Divino if Al Divino had a clue. And More or less. Like, they rap in the same style, but he tries to rap on beat, tries to put songs together. They've got collaborative projects, and most of Al's good projects have Estee with him to kind of keep him on task a little bit. And this is, have you listened to it or not? I don't know.
No, I have not, actually. I'll be honest with you. I haven't heard of it. So that says a lot about where I'm at.
Well,
that
okay.
says a lot about where I'm at with Griselda these days. I have not heard of it.
I think that, I can see Griselda just kind of getting a little samey. The way I sell it, and I sell it in the comment box that way, there I go, being in the fucking comment box again. This is what happens when you're out of work for a whole month. You just start gravitating towards the fucking comment box.
Yeah.
But the penalty box. But no.
5 minute major, yeah.
But it's in the same sort of vein as the Pray Fors, Paris and Haiti. Like, it's colorful, it's full of personality, it suits Estee in the same way that Westside and Mach were good personalities to form a project around, in the same way that Conway and Benny kind of aren't suited towards those major projects when we were talking about the Conway project. And it's very funny in that he starts with a Tucker Carlson sound clip, and like, it's kind of comparative to starting the West Side sound clip with Chris Benoit, or like the Hitler Wears Hermes with Hitler.
Jesus. Yeah.
But no, it's like 45 minutes long, but it moves very quickly. The features are really, really well chosen. You get two very good uses of Al Divino. I think that if you like that side of Griselda, it hits hard, quick. You get a great conductor beat on there, maybe two. I forget what the name of the one producer is. The one issue I see on there, and this became a thing on Twitter real quick, is that Westside apparently has a bit of an issue with paying producers for their work.
That old chestnut.
Yeah, Awani, great producer that I have paid for his work on Bandcamp. Westside did not do such a thing and gave him the old, well, you should be happy for the exposure, the old gig economy type thing. So, pay your producers. But he
was telling the producer to pull himself up by his bootstraps?
More or less, yeah. And then there were like a bunch of Griselda stands in the comments who were backing him up on that. But Westside, don't be an asshole. Pay your producers.
The bare minimum, guys. The bare minimum. That's all we ask.
I think the bare minimum is to do such. But yeah, if you like Pray for Paris, Pray for Haiti, this is right up your alley. And especially if you're a fan of like the wrestling reference side of Griselda, this is great. It's kind of the antidote to the whole monochrome sort of Benny Conway aspect of it.
Yeah. No, that is something where, I will check for it, because I'm not, I'm kind of out on Griselda just in terms of like making like, great music for the most part outside of like Boldy, but I'll still listen to it. But yeah, I hadn't even heard of it, to be honest with you. So what else did I want to mention? Did you want to talk, because I'll hold off on this, but did you want to talk about Navy Blue, or?
I with Aaron and that okay, so Navy had the one thing, he had the quadrilogy, which unless you give him like a fucking organ or something on his website, you can't get. It's still not even. I have not been able to find it on the internet, and such. And so then there's the one that's actually, streamable. I have not listened to. So you've heard it?
Well, I think you'll. No real surprise here. I think you'll like it a lot. I actually think it's one of Navy's best works. So, I liked it a lot. I listened to it twice all the way through, and I found it pretty moving. So,
I've heard that it's not really out of his wheelhouse in terms. I'm sorry to cut you off, by the way. I've heard it's not really out of his wheelhouse in terms of anything except for the lyrical content, where he digs really deep in terms of the writing. So,
yeah, it's definitely a writer's album. And Navy is an artist that I really, not that I never liked before, I always liked, but my appreciation for him as the years have gone on has definitely increased like tenfold. So, yeah, really good album. Definitely one that I'm not gonna lie and say I'll be returning to often, but that's no fault of the album. It's more of the general nature of the album and its content. But I think an album that works very well for like for summer. So I think it could be worth a listen in the summertime. Wanted to also mention another album that I know we both listened to, the Yola Tango record.
Yes, I was kind of saving that. That's my favorite.
We can save that. I've got plenty of.
No, I mean, I don't think there's any rock record I put above it. I'm kind of looking. I've honestly, this is how this year has been for me. I forget if Guided by Voices dropped an album this year. I know they have a new single, so they're probably going to drop something else. But I guess it was not top tier Bob because I'm sure it was good. But yeah, so. Definitely, I love that Yola Tango record. Yola Tango record is remarkable. It's the best in a very long time.
100%. I would agree. I think it's. I forget, the whole trajectory of their discography at this point. But in terms of like the platonic ideal for what I like from an indie rock record in 2023 is that album. I really like it. I think it is probably their best since what, like Fade maybe, or I'm Not Afraid of You. Yeah,
like
it might be their best in like 20 years. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. Like,
right. I'd put it up there with "And Nothing Turned Itself Inside Out." Honestly, like I think that again, I sort of lyrically put it in the same bucket as. I mean, from much older people, as the Paramore album, and speaking to like the Common Condition a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a band that has been around for 39 years, and I can't name a legitimately bad album that they put out. And bad is even a strong word because the lowest album that I have rated from them, it's like 3 stars, which means it was like okay.
I think that they admit that their earliest stuff before they got James on as a drummer is not very good. And I can't say I've heard anything prior to Painful, which I believe.
Oh, that's true. Some of you're right. Some of that stuff is mid. I'll concede.
They have like a few goofy cover records that they did as like
marathon.
Those are
fake
literally covers on the air and they're doing them improv style. You can't like judge those as on the same standard, but they're literally called Murder and Murder in the Second Degree. So it's like that's not like, but like studio album wise, the stuff, but like as the unit they would become, whereas Ira, George James, Painful.
Since Painful, I mean they've been about as good. I mean, and obviously the run from Painful to and Nothing is one of the great runs in indie rock history. So. Yeah.
And I think that the stuff on here, the last couple songs, I recommend finding a rip that has the Untitled at the very end of the vinyl, which is just kind of like an instrumental, but it plays the record out really, really nicely. I think that they do a really good job deploying George's vocals on here. It's mostly Ira vocals there, but there are like 2 or 3 songs where she's on. And I think that's just a really nice balance of singing. There's one song with the guest vocals too. It's just really well done, really well sequenced. Feels mature in a way that doesn't feel like staid. I know there was kind of a complaint that they, because they did like a covers album, that they were getting a little too old person-y, I guess. Well, first of all, they're getting old. Like, speaking as an old person, they were getting a bit, but like...
This band's been around for 40 years. Like, it's crazy,
And they're remarkably consistent in the same way that I think Guided by Voices are remarkably consistent, but in a different way, because Guided by Voices went through multiple iterations because Bob had that sort of Marky Smith, like, all right, fuck you, you're out of the band. Not in the same way, because Marky Smith is like literally like to everyone, you're out of the band. Whereas like Bob would kind of like do a more normal thing. Whereas like The Fall had like the biggest turnover of any personnel in history. But Yola Tango is, once they settled on a lineup, they've been remarkably consistent. So, yeah, it's a great album. It feels warm and inviting, and it lived in my car for a very long time, and I kind of want to listen to it again now because it's like been a while since I listened to it. So, and it feels like it speaks to, in both lyrically and instrumentally, to where humanity is at, is kind of how I felt about it. Like This Stupid World. Like, it's a title that feels simple but resonant. Like, it's such a simple title. I don't know. But then you listen to his lyrics too. They're like kind of basic yet resonant. Again, like, I kind of feel the same way about the Zelooperz record. I guess I'm not citing anything here, and it's a rock record, but I mean, you know what? You've listened to the record, you know what I mean. Like, he has a very
absolutely
spoken way of saying things, and I feel like his guitar style is also the same way too. Yeah, it's a great.
It's a great record. It's very comfortable. I mean, that you don't need me to tell you that.
Speaking of comfortable and comforting, and I just heard this record for the second time today. I think the first time in full, actually. The Jessie Ware record.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, I've spun it twice, and I really liked it. I think that her pivot between the last album and this one into this, like, new disco throwback, like, 70s lane, I think it really suits her.
Yeah, it's warm. I do feel like it loses a bit of momentum towards the end because it feels a bit samey, but I feel like that also suits the sound too. It's comfort food music a little bit. Like, and it starts off with forward, but I have nothing wrong with this. It's a great summer album. I feel like I'm going to listen to it more in the summer. I think it's the perfect album too for like the world opening up. And I'm the last person who's going to say that, like, anything is over, but I feel like we're stepping out of things a bit, and this is the perfect album to go out into the world with.
I would definitely agree. I mean, it had me, full disclosure, those first couple songs, that'll have you strutting around like that was like pseudo dance floor shit, those first few songs. So yeah, great record. Also, on a similar tip, the DJ Sabrina, the teenage DJ, had a EP. I mean, listeners or RYM users or whoever who know this artist, who know her. I mean, she's one of the best doing it right now. Has made, I would argue, 2 classic records already. Came out with the EP, few songs, 4 or 5 loosies, fire stuff, more at 11. Nothing too crazy, but wanted to include that because it's on a similar. This is more of a house music tip, but just wanted to include that in there on Electronic Music Corner. And also on Electronic Music Corner, shout out to Gum, the record. Oh crap, what is it called? See, this is the problem. Is I shout out an artist and then I forget what the album's called. I know it has Cellophane on it, which might be the title of it, but Cellophane is a great song. It also has Rhythm Seeker. Yes, Rhythm Seeker. It's like a UK garage record, very quick, 3 songs. Has Love You Better on it, which is dope. Very summery. You just talked about venturing into the world with. This is a similar thing. It's like go talk to somebody, go be outside, go meet someone, have a drink or something. Like, have a good time. So that's what this little EP gives me that feeling.
And I kind of mentioned on my log about being a companion, but like sister nocturnal version of the Jessie Ware album. It was also my second listen to this and first in full, albeit not in the best circumstances for what it's intended for, was the Kalela album, Raven.
Oh, sure. I mean, if you talk about heavy hitters, that is, I mean, I don't mind spoiling that this is my number 1.
Okay,
we can wait a little bit if you want, or if you want to do it now.
No, I don't have a fully formed on that one, so I'll let you have the floor on that. That was honestly going to more be a transition to me talking about, we're going to go back to hip hop on this one, because I've said before about going into the Sunshine, talking about stuff about this artist before, our R.A.P, Ferreira. His recent music has kind of given me that impression, and he's put out 2 albums of, granted, in something I would say is a bit of a silly way, and this is something I will grant the comment box has kind of called him out on this, a limited digital release, which I think
I didn't get around to listening to it once I found that out. This is probably
it's not an NFT. It's not NFT, so he's not doing that, but it's like, I don't get it. Like, I mean, we're fully pro Rory on this podcast, and I'm not encouraging that anybody take any extra legal means to hear these, but I don't understand. But these are also two really great releases that he put out. He put out Lilac Diesel, and the other one is KEF 33. They're essentially demo releases, alternate versions of songs that he put out on recent albums. Over different beats, and they're outstanding, and he has them for direct release on his website. He might not anymore because they're both versions of 1,000 digital files. It's the method, the rationale behind the method here eludes me a bit, I have to say. But it's really, really, really good material, and you can find it. I'm not going to give you any more direction beyond that, but it's really worth seeking out. It's some of his best rapping over. He hasn't really rapped over Scallops Hotel stuff in a while, and I hope that he maybe rethinks how he distributes this, or possibly comes up with a physical distribution method or something in the future for these, because it really deserves to be heard by a wider audience. It's great stuff. It's just as good as his other material recently, and it does feel like the same sort of things he was doing on, like, well, it feels like a different perspective on like Purple Moonlight Pages or that sort of, like, obviously it's the same material, and there is some original rapping on here too, so check it out if you can find it.
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely check out the other one, the one that was not limited. It was on my list and I didn't get to it, so that's on me, because like you said, we are a pro Rory podcast. I guess in terms of other stuff that I want to shout out to the listeners in more of like a lightning round format, if you are a listener that enjoys Regalia, and like the Regalia episode last year, and enjoyed me talking about artists like Northxan and Layosh, etc., the more underrated ones, the ones who don't get damn near any plays, they both put out stuff this year. It's great. Northxan had a self-titled record that I think is really good and easily the best like full-length Regalia thing of this year. I wonder if that is, part of me wonders if that's a subgenre that is, or a scene that is going to continue, because a lot of the artists that were doing it kind of moved on, but I would like to see it continue because I find it very creative, like, you know, mending orchestral stuff and like, you know, those influences with like Chicago drill stuff. I find that mashup to be interesting. Some other stuff, Dean Blunt put out a really good project this year. You know, Dean Blunt, if you know what Dean Blunt sounds like, you know what it's going to sound like. What else? Quinn, formerly known as Osquin, put out a number of tapes this year, all short, all good, and I would say that my favorite song she put out was Four Leaf Clover, which is this really cool, like, soul sampled chipmunk soul type song with like a R&B flavor to it. So that was cool. I'm trying to think of what else, if we can clear some of the internet brain rot stuff that I like. New Jazz. Gotta talk about New Jazz. Haven't done an episode on it. This is a classic episode like last year that me and Centaurse, or me and Ben, aka Created by Rejection, would have done. This has dominated like my car listening and like my gym listening. It's very easy to listen to. A lot of the loops, a lot of the like beats and melodies have just been stuck in my head over the last like 3 months. Super fun sound, and I would say I would recommend an artist called Zahn, his album. However, he deleted it from the internet, so RIP, don't have it, lost media. But I will say that in terms of stuff that you can find and stuff that's gotten a little bit of traction, the Lunchbox record, just called New Jazz, so it's pretty easy, has a saxophone emoji cover art, so pretty easy to find. I would say that Lunchbox has, you know, coined the term and also has some of the best music in this lane. Amir produced a lot of it. Amir is like a mad genius, like one of the better producers in the underground today, I think. Just how he comes up with some of the loops is so crazy to me. So yeah. And then in terms of dark plug stuff, it wouldn't be an episode without me talking about Smokingskul. Guess what? Smokingskul put out 1 million good tapes. Go listen to them. Some of them are dark. Some of them are like lighter plug, like the tape OG, which has a lot of like traditional 2020, 2021 Plugg stuff, which you can hear like, samples from Scarface and, a very light and airy sound. And shout out to Simon, who was the producer. I think he's a French producer. I don't know exactly what, but he produced that whole project. So Smokingskul sounds great over any kind of beat, whether it's doing dark, heavy hitting stuff that gives you a headache, or it's very light and airy, like the Plugg stuff. I actually think he maybe almost sounds better over that. Like his voice cuts through that sound because it's so distinct. And I would say, Patrick, listen to his song called Ha Ha, because that was also produced by Simon. It was just a single, but it's very well regarded. And I think it even transferred beyond our just general mutuals on in the server on the site. So I think people like it. It's a very accessible song, and it's that same thing I just talked about, where it's kind of light and sounds like just like a Plugg song, but then his voice kind of cuts through it and is very gruff and distinct. So that's my favorite of theirs. And the collab tape he did with fellow artist Squillo, which is Punch Bros, which I described in the server when it came out as, I'm listening to this instead of drinking morning coffee because I'm a maniac. And that's what it is. It will jolt you in your seat. So yeah, if you want something that will knock your head back, you have that one. So that's me clearing out some of my internet SoundCloud and adjacent subgenre stuff for the episode. But yeah, all that stuff, if you know, basically.
I would ask how that compares to Ha 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 by Chief Keef. But that was my
very, very different, but hey, the ethos is the same, different sound, but
anyway. Just real quick, going through my list here. You know what? I'm just going to do the beat tape selection real quick. The beat tape section. Nothing that you've heard, I'm sure. Bat Sauce is somebody that I have gotten into recently. He is, I want to say British. I don't know. I'm trying to remember what rapper producer he was linked to who passed away. But he put out a book of jazz musicians that he did sketches of, and then he put out a tape called Dispatches from Da Nang that was basically all found sound samples that he moved to Vietnam and basically did samples of things that were street musicians that he captured from essentially just like his recorder, live music that he captured and from the area, and then packaged it as in a 1 of 50, and then put it as something that you could make as a kite for Chinese New Year. And I bought one of those, and it's still sitting right now on my bookshelf as something that I'm going to put out for the next New Year. So that's one of my top beat tapes. Oh No, and put out something with Roy Ayers that he released in a very, very annoying rollout as a Good Vibes / Bad Vibes, which is very close to his old beat tapes as Dr. No, which is very cool. That's like Experiment, Ethiopium, etc. If you're really like into those old Stones Throw beat tapes, that's nice. Koopma obviously puts out good stuff. He put out a Priel Sun. So if you like that old Dilla sound, those are good. My 2 top beat tapes this year, one is by the hilariously named but very depressing Samurai Banana, who has an incredible concept for his beat tape, which is called, and I can't believe that I don't have this up right now, because I purchased the CD, but I don't have it handy. It's basically a beat tape that has a lyric sheet that's supposed to capture the ups and downs of depression and bipolar. And it's called, Just Tired. I'm sorry, Just Tired. And it comes with a 15-page lyric sheet full of flash fiction and drawings. And I don't have the CD with me yet, but it comes with a PDF. And it's really an excellent beat tape that goes from like lo-fi to like almost D&B, like drum and bass, drill and bass type stuff. And it's a great beat tape that I will almost never listen to because it's too intense. But it's a really remarkable piece of work, and I highly recommend anybody who likes backwoods type of stuff. He was actually on the Sketch 185 album as a feature. I don't know if he like contributed to the beat or if he was vocal on it. I talk about it's like track 3, I believe, if you listen to the episode I did with Thoughtfoul about backwoods. So check that one out. Thoughtfoul, shout out to him. He was the one who recommended the tape to me. And my beat tape of the year is Notes and Tones. I said we get back to him. DJ Muggs put out, I cannot believe this has not been formally done before. There was one about 11 or 12 years ago that was like a various artist doing a tribute to Sun Ra, but this is the first real one producer, all samples of Sun Ra tape. And it was done by, no one's ever said a bad word about Egon before. And so Egon came up with this with DJ Muggs, and it's a remarkable beat tape that was, again, rollouts done in a really obnoxious way where it's like $150 comes with a bottle of wine, but unlike the last time that Muggs did a wine beat tape, you can actually get it on DSPs, so you can easily access this one. It's really well done, really good flips of Sun Ra stuff, some really notable, like, recognizable material that you'll know if you know Sun Ra at all, some more obscure stuff, and it's very close to Madlib. Like, it's not very close. Like, it's, I would say, probably the most relaxed or like, obviously it's Sun Ra, jazzy stuff that you've heard out of Muggs, but still knocks pretty hard. So, yeah, if you're into, like, it's, I think the most traditional beat tape Muggs has ever done. And it lived in my car for a while. So, yeah, if you're a fan of Sun Ra, Muggs, Madlib, anything Notes and Tones, check that one out. So that's my traditional incoherent beat tape lightning round that I do on all of these that everybody skipped past.
Beat tape corner. Gotta love beat tape corner.
Right.
My goal is to listen to at least 2 of these. That's my goal. We'll see if I
whenever I do these.
I feel like last year I heard 1, but that's why I'm going for 2.
Okay. Well, it's good to have goals.
You sound like a teacher who's not very confident in his or her student.
I always have like that like disappointed guidance counselor vibe. So
yeah, it's like, oh, it's nice to have goals, you know.
Well, you listen to Sedale Thread. I'm looking at my Sedale Thread over here, and you did listen to that. So
that's true. I did. It was very, very good. You were not kidding, and I made a point to bring it up on the podcast, and I even told you that you were right. So that was a double win for you.
Well, I mean, that does transition to the next thing I want to talk about, which is the Backwoods compilation, which reminded me of Sedale Threat, which is High Bias, which is based on a reference to Len Bias, another basketball, which I don't know if you heard that one, which is, it's very good. It's not as good as Sedale Threat. It does kind of reference, again, to the most obvious thing ever, which is my number one, which I don't know why I'm being like fucking coy about this one. Like, you already mentioned what your number one is, but yeah, it's,
But we'll get to it. We'll get to your number one.
Yeah, High Bias. It's Backwoods, curated by Billy Woods, obviously the A&R like head of Backwoods, and essentially like kind of sort of like the Steel Tip Dove producer album from a few years ago that was essentially a stealth Billy Woods album. Starts off with a noisy Arm & Hammer track. It's got some cool stuff like a Breezley Bruin solo. It's got an amazing Shrapnel track called The Crucible on it. It's definitely a bit of an acquired taste sort of thing, but if you've acquired the taste enough to look for a Backwoods label sampler, you're going to love this, I would say. Yeah, pretty much all I'd say about that.
Yeah, no, I'm actually disappointed in myself that I haven't checked this out because it's got a very, very high approval rating from a number of friends. So I definitely saw it come across in some logs and whatnot, but now I looked at when it was being, rated by the likes of you and, Look at Go, shout out John and other people. And I was like, oh, I was very busy around those few days, so I probably didn't get a chance to listen to it at that time. But
It's an unbiased reference, and it includes multiple bars about shoving paddles up police officers' asses. It feels like it's right up your alley.
Right on my alley. I mean, you had me at Len bias reference, but then you add in that, and I'm sold. I will be there no matter what.
And the last track is an August Fanon instrumental where Billy Woods goes absolutely fucking nuts. It's like one of the craziest Billy Woods verses you've heard. It's just like 2 minutes of So I really recommend. Like we've been spoiled for choice, I think, about like posse albums in that niche lately, and this is right at the top of it. I still think Sedale Threat's the best, but this is probably like second or third in that niche. So
yeah, no question. I would say that in terms of one of them I wouldn't really say is a pop record, but I'll maybe in terms of two pop and electronic-ish albums from this year that I want to highlight. One of which is very, very close to my favorite of the year. It wasn't my favorite, but it was like my number 3 if I had to have rank them. The Jane Remover DJ mix, just called Jane Remover Remixes. Jane Remover, formerly known as Delete Zeke. Jane is someone who I've been talking about on the podcast for 2+ years now, and has been nothing but rave reviews from me. And she has a mix that it's basically like an EDM mix. It's like a pop mashup with like electronic and like Jersey Club stuff and a lot of that. It does blend a lot of different genres, but it has some of the coolest mashups I've heard in the last few years, including all the great Jersey Club records that would mash up pop songs. I think one of my favorites is how she completely reworks the Drake song Pop Style, and it goes into an original song at the end, and that original song is like very serene and beautiful and cool. And Pop Style before that, how she reworks it's very hectic and crazy and whatnot. Very, very cool. Also, I mean, has a song that I loved off of the album from Days God last year, Tell Me, her remix of Tell Me, which is a great song. There's just a lot going on here. I'll be very honest. There's an Ariana Grande and Arca mashup that is so dope.
That sounds really cool. I actually made a note that I wonder why it's going to edit out when you said Pop Style, because I hate Pop Style.
No, you had it like, an involuntary reflex.
Yeah, that's like one of those.
But I'll tell you, it is
Drake pop songs where I'm just like, oh god damn it. But
it doesn't sound like Pop Style. I'll be honest with you. It is very reworked. Yeah.
I assume, like, that's the thing about Drake pop songs is he has such expensive like tools that go into them that I feel like you could do something with it. So I'm sure you could. Oh yeah. No, this is a very, I forget exactly. I think it's like 40 minutes, 38 minutes, something like that. It's very chaotic, and then the last like 10 minutes is this one track that's very. One Note is doing it a disservice because it's one of the most beautiful songs I've heard all year, but it's like very low key. The tempo is a lot slower, so it like the whole thing throughout the DJ mix just builds and builds and builds. It feels like a DJ mix. It's very hectic, very chaotic, and then it ends on like a come down, and I absolutely love it. I think it's so cool. Jane did this mix for NTS Radio, so that makes sense why it was allowed to be added to RYM. So yeah, I mean, one of the coolest artists working today. Not many things are. I just want to take a quick moment to shout out to Wyatt, because he's going to hate this episode more than anything, because I'm just trying to think of how many things he's going to have to throw up, and I can just picture him banging his head against the wall about how many times he's going.
Well, he's allowed to bang his head against the wall because we're banging our head against the wall when he has any food takes, which will have to be rehashed on a future episode at some point.
I almost think we'll one day have to do like a food episode, and it's just like he's going to have to defend what a taco is, when like define taco for us.
Listeners, let's just say Wyatt is not a AK Kitten Puke on RYM. Let's just say Kitten Puke is not a real life Gordon Ramsay. Let's just say that he's not an Anthony Bourdain.
I was going to say that. Okay, so both of your hosts right now have worked in kitchens.
That's true.
I don't think
Very true.
kitchen. I don't think Wyatt would last very long in a kitchen.
I would like to see it though.
Yeah.
I would like to see it.
Yeah, I would like to see him sue for a minute. You know, like
just get absolutely bombarded with tickets. Oh my
I
gosh.
Wyatt in the weeds real quick.
Yeah, sorry, Wyatt. We'll rehash this in a future episode. Did you I wanted to ask you, did you listen to the Caroline Polachek record by any chance, or is that just one that you saw?
I did. It might be cataloged. It's certainly in the queue. I meant to get to, but I've heard.
Yeah, very, very, very good, as is tradition with her. I mean, Pang was great. I was hoping for a Charlie feature. We didn't get it, but that's fine. Still a great record, and she's one of the best performers too. Like if you look at her live performances and stuff, like on YouTube or whatever, she really gets into it and sells the music. So, I mean, Billions was an amazing song last year, and I'm glad that she just kept it up, because this has some of the best singles of the year. It's some of the best pop music of the year. It's right up there with my favorite pop music of the year in general, and I don't think that's gonna change all too much. So definitely an album that I think on my year-end list, I'll just say it'll be in the top 20 for sure. I don't see it dropping lower than that. So great record, and she well deserved for her to kind of have this solo blow up, even into a pseudo mainstream context for her. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I think she absolutely deserves it. So just real before I forget these, because I feel like we're kind of winding down here. This was meant to go into the backwoods section. I touched on this more than touched on it when we did the backwoods episode, but the Sketch 185 Jeff Markey record, he left nothing for the swim back, is incredibly intense and essential and vital and needs to be listened to by everybody, especially as we just talked on working in kitchens in the service industry. I think that especially in the wake of how a lot of people have been left off in recent times, I think speaks to a lot of people's experience. Speaking of the posse albums and such, Steel Tip Dove put out All the Weight Feathers Can't Hold or Don't Hold. I think I'm speaking that wrong. Speaking also to the R.A.P. Ferreira albums we were talking about before, and again, Backwoods is kind of a half producer album, a third producer album, third beat tape, third posse album. It's rappers you might know, rappers you don't know. It's kind of got a trip hop vibe to it. It seems to be an album about relationships, but also an album about it's the title of it seems to be about a little bit the idea of when you die, your sins will be weighted against all the weight feathers don't hold, all of your sins versus a feather sort of thing. And if you think about the rappers on there and what they're rapping about, Paul Barman shows up again, Rory's on there. I think Def C might be on there. I don't know, but there are also some unknown rappers on there too. Again, I feel like it's all the titles on it seem to allude a bit to a relationship concept. I'm a big fan of Steel Tip Dove. If you look at a lot of the albums I talked about, Dove shows up either mastering it or doing beats on it. So highly recommended. Dove shows up as the producer on this Alaska album that I wrote way too much about on RYM, which has actually as its cover art 3 Mile Island, which I used to drive by every day going to my old job. And right now I'm blanking on the title of, I have to now look up. It has a the Structural Dynamics of Flow. And it's very much about being depressed and raising a family and trying to just get through the depression of everyday life. It's a very morose album, but a very wonderful album. I can't guarantee that you will necessarily love it if you are not necessarily in that headspace in life, but I think that it is worth at least a shot. I'm not doing a great job of selling it right now, but I think that it's a dusty old head album, unfortunately, but I think that the production is very appealing if you are into the backwoods headspace. Likewise, for the album that Alaska did with Jason Griff, Pop Songs for the Apocalypse, which is equally cheerful as given by the title. That's my backwoods / Wrecking Crew lightning round section for that. I just wanted to clear all of that. Speaking of old people being depressing, Black Thought and Al Michaels' Very Glorious Game. Did you hear that one?
No, I didn't, but I saw it and I didn't get to it. Oh man, there's always like a few that I forget. That one I really wanted to listen to though, because it's Black Thought. You have to listen to it.
Yeah, that one. It's excellent. It's a Black Thought soul album, much in the vein of Cheat Codes, and it's a lot. Again, doing a very bad salesmanship. This is why I got out of the service industry. But it's, great Black Thought, Philly rap over jazz stuff. I
mean, it's Black Thought. It's going to be great. It's going to be
great, and it's not as morose as it seems. I hate to be like, go read my review, but kind of go read my review on that one. It and the Alaska album are a bit of peace with each other in that there are people who are kind of coming to terms with stuff in their lives. I will say that Black Thought is much more seasoned and personable than Alaska is. I will say, again, and Kitten Buke is probably going to agree with me as he's listening to this, that Alaska has a bit of a whininess about it and that Black Thought doesn't. And that's probably why Black Thought's been a lot more successful as an artist than Alaska has. But yeah, I mean, again, a lot of this comes also from my being where I am at in life. Some certain things are going to appeal to me and subject matter, and some things I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
and also sometimes you just want to walk into a room and shit's critical.
Right, exactly. Oh my gosh! Shout out to Neff, and shout out to Black Thought. I'm sure this album's great. Like,
no, it really is. It is, and it's actually not a rehash of Cheat Codes at all. Like, that's a one thing. Like, you said something earlier, like we were talking about. I forget what album we were talking about. It was like, it's a cheat code. Just throw all this stuff at. And I feel like he kind of
the Mike album. It's a cheat code to put gospel samples on shit.
Exactly. I think that he goes out of his way to avoid that on this album. Like, he kind of structures it to make you focus on his writing, and he doesn't take shortcuts. Whereas I think the Mike album is all shortcuts, and it kind of lampshades the weakness. Like, he tries to hide, like, he has all these distractions and bells and whistles, and then if you actually try and focus on what he's writing, there's nothing there. Whereas the Black Thought album, like, you can sit down and focus on the writing because there is something there. There's actually something to. I don't know. There's a difference.
And for the record, and not that he would ever do this because he's far too smart and far too good of a rapper and artist to do this, but if Black Thought wanted to, he could rehash cheat codes and make another great album because he's just Black Thought. Like, that's what he could do.
If Black Thought he could do an album with a currency feature and the fucking Lord Infamous references and all that stuff and make just as good.
And do it much better, and have actual, compelling content.
Black Thought is a landlord.
That's true. And you know what? And score one for point for Black Thought. Not that he needed more points, but there's another.
Yeah, he doesn't need to own a fucking whatever that thing is in Kensington. Who would live there? Who the fuck would live there?
The fucking architectural design house, whatever the fuck that is. It looks like It looks like a bad Picasso painting type shit, like a house from a Picasso painting, but bad. Where you're like, why are the windows all out of whack? What is happening?
Like something my daughter would Play-Doh.
Yeah, folks.
Don't edit. I really do. Like I'm all on that guy's side. Like,
folks, the gentrification of cities is out of control. Like, is out of control.
Somebody to go on, at least in the YouTube video, for what we're talking about here.
For those of you that know, if you know Kensington, you know that they're trying to gentrify it, and that's hilarious. And that's all I have to say about that.
There's a architectural eyesore in, of all places, Kensington right now.
Kensington.
The sorest of thumbs.
Too funny. I guess we'll do
pivot.
Should we do one more before we get to our our number ones, because it'll be good because your number one is my number two and yada yada yada. So I guess the one that
let's see if I got
was gonna bring up. I mean, you just listened to If Looks Could Kill, so if you want to give your take on.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right. If Looks Could Kill. I liked it a lot, but I do kind of understand the monochrome / too long complaint. It did give me a bit of an appreciation for Cardi as an editor in his own projects. Not like going back to our recent episodes, like the content dump stuff that wasn't obviously supposed to be out there.
Right. No, and you know, yeah, I would say that it is. Look, even as someone who loves the album and has played it a lot, like 80 minutes is a lot of music. Let's just be real.
But there are no bad songs. We'll say no bad songs.
True.
No bad songs. And transitions really well into each other. But there are also choices. Like, again, this is my first listen, but there are choices I would make in sequencing that are different.
Right. Yeah. And I mentioned this in the server before I get your opinion on one or two more things, but No Love Deep Trans, which one great username, second shout out to her.
Yeah.
She really likes Lonely, and she wrote a review that I liked where she was talking about how I'm gonna paraphrase it. It's very short, but she said, I can't deny that If Looks Could Kill is something like a tonal drone. Nearly every song is some permutation of, soaring guitar leads and percussion and atmospheric elements, yada yada. But I get the argument that it should be shorter, but after several listens, she felt that she settled into the opinion that it was like one of the coolest sounding rap albums she had heard in years. And I kind of agree with that general thesis where over time, the length of it doesn't affect me because I'm enjoying the individual songs so much, and the general uniformness of, especially that middle chunk, really feeds into each other nicely. And it's a thing where if I'm going somewhere, or if I have like 30 minutes or whatever, I'll play 30 minutes from it, and then maybe like the next day or something, I'll come back to another 30 minutes of it. So Santurce in the server talked about, making your own track list or organizing it in a way you want to. I feel like that's a good way to go about it too.
Yeah, I could see it having that like WLR plus extras type quality to it.
Yeah.
Although I feel like he have quite nearly the personality that Cardi has in terms of being able to crap a hook out of anything.
No, he's more, and Wyatt said this, and a lot of other people have said this on the server as well. It's something that I noticed on first or second listen. This is the most like future evoked album that Lonely has ever done. I mean, by far. There's a lot of future on this, and I've said this multiple times. The third track, Fly Shit, which is the one after If Looks Could Kill, that one to me was just like a 2023 version of Fly Shit Only. That song off Evil, because it has like a similar guitar lead, and it's there's only one word different, and it has a similar like kind of hook structure. So I think it's like an updated future type vibe that I get on this more than any Cardi thing like that, like you said, some people would compare it to.
Yeah, some certain lesser reviewers who would make a really hacky, obvious comparison of some kind. Yeah, I very much liked it on first listen. I don't know if it's going to end up in my top 20 or even top 50, but I could also see it maybe ending up in I can see living with it. That's a very good review to quote, actually, because I can see that, because I think one of the things I really liked about it on first listen was the transitions, was the uniformity. I didn't see that as a negative. I thought the way it flowed together was great, even though there were definite highlights. I like the title track for sure, Moment of Silence for sure. Was it Security? Was it called? Near the end? Safety.
With the Team Sleep sample. Yeah.
No, not was Safety the Team Sleep sample? I thought Moment of Silence had the Team Sleep sample.
No, Safety had the Team Sleep sample.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, Moment of Silence is also amazing though. It's one of my like top 3 songs. So you're not wrong. You're still not wrong. You said you like the one on Chris Paul too.
Yeah, Chris Paul had an excellent sample. Yeah, Chris Paul had the Killer Cam sample.
Yep. So no, there are some deep pull like samples on here that I thought were really cool, and kind of once again.
No, I don't like Ken Carson at the very, very end. I feel like he breaks. You can't really break the vibe if you're at the very end.
It's the very end, but the whole album is one vibe, and he's a different vibe. Yeah.
So I can't.
I actually agree with you.
So, and I've really been not into Ken Carson. I'm not gonna lie, and not to the degree of certain people who I think overly shit on him. I think he's fine. Like whatever. Like every label's gonna have somebody I'm not as into. He's not terrible, but I kind of like the uniformity of not having any features. Like
to me, I actually couldn't imagine it with features.
But, Platinum with no features, Jake. But
but it's funny. I think this album brings forth an interesting question that I always have when listening to music, because a couple years ago, like Yeet was criticized for this too, by some people who weren't all as into the music as I was, where it's like, how much can one singular presence carry an album, and like, does it work for you if the production is so great and is able to carve out like different alterations and approach as the album goes on, even if they're like subtle twists or subtle tweaks rather? Because I think that's an interesting comparison point to this record. Future, I think, was criticized for it, back in the, I think when like DS2 came out, people were like, oh, it's like 18 songs or whatever, So I think that it's interesting how that is still like a conversation point, and how much does that work for, it probably depends on how much you like the production, I guess. People
probably make that conversation as far back as Screw Tapes too, to be honest with you. Like,
good point. Yeah. And that's probably the ultimate example of it, because those could go on for a while.
I mean, and also rest in peace to Big Pokey, real quick.
Oh yeah, R.A.P. A great presence, and damn, that it feels like every year we always have another one taken from us too soon. It's tough, but
I mean,
no easy way to transition from that, unfortunately. But
it was just a hard one to.
No, but it was worth saying. It was worth saying. I guess before we talk about, I mean, let's be real. We know what albums they listen to. What albums, but I want to say just 2 seconds. I know I've asked you to listen to this artist before. I don't know if you've listened to them, but Tony Snow put out a tape this year, Love Streak. Really good. Kind of has like, uses a lot of like R&B samples, and it's Tony Snow. It's a Plugg tape. It's a Southern hip hop tape. It has like that. A little bit of more of an old school feel, a little more of a sample based feel this time around.
Like 4.5s on Ghost shit, so I should really fucking listen to him. Like I see, like
he's been, I think, since 2020, been one of the most maybe the most consistent artist doing Plugg. Like really, he's so consistent, and he plays around with stuff. I mean, he had a song last year that I loved, which I'll send you just so you can listen to. But it was over. It was him rapping over the "My Mind Went Blank." The DJ Screw, My Mind Went Blank beat. Well, I guess the original like PSK beat, but whatever. So that was really cool, and he has a whole tape actually that's very well regarded on the site, but not many people have listened to it. It only has like 50 ratings or something. But he has a whole tape called Black Billionaires Club, which is just him rapping over like Pharrell and like Neptune's beats.
That sounds really cool. I want to check that out.
So, yeah, really, really cool. I'll send that to you as well. But yeah, so Tony Snow, very talented, put out a great tape. It's what I say every year with Tony Snow. It's like more at 11, he put out a great tape. But I just want to throw that out there before we get into our top.
All right, so I'm just, my best of the year is, I feel like I'm a broken ass record on this shit. It's Billy Woods album. Billy Woods, Kenny Siegel Maps. Not that Maps, by the way. I just recently learned what that fucking means. Nobody else had like.
Can I lay down a hot take? I don't know if it's a hot take, but I'll lay down a take for you, and I want to know if you agree or not. Is this the best Billy Woods album?
Well, if you look in the Comment box, I say it is.
Oh, interesting. I literally
Best.
see. I don't look at the comment boxes enough. We've gone full circle.
You should stop looking at comment boxes again. Like this has been a bad month for me going in comment boxes and saying shit. But yeah, I actually think this might be his best written work. And again, this is going back to a recurring theme of me being in a place in my life where I feel like shit's hitting different, whatever. And I think it goes back to it's the way he writes this. I think where the beginning and end tie together so well. And the very end of this specifically hits me where I live. So maybe it might not be his best necessarily, because I think that so many of his albums you can make an argument for it. Like, I can see the argument for History Will Absolve Me. I can see the argument for Paraffin. I can see the argument for Haram. But right now, for where I'm at in my life, like,
it's up there.
But first of all, the way this ties back to Hiding Places, like, I mean, thematically, Hiding Places, like, aesthetically, you have the Kenny Siegel jazz stuff and the way it evolves to where it is here. And then there are Hiding Places, and then there's exploration, right? Like, there's hiding, and then now there's out in the world. And then you have to see it was hiding then, and then now the world is like, you're back on tour, right? So, and that's also explored if you get the physical version. Shout out to M. Musgraves, who also did Billy's awesome children's book. I highly recommend that. A is for Anarchist, which I'm totally going to read to my daughter soon, which again hits me where I live. And then it's tied together with the very first bar of the album, the very last bar of the album. And then if you get the physical, every track has like a transportation device that's drawn with it. And then, he talks about time and the first bar and the very last bar and where he's going to be. And then every track relates back to that. The writing on this is just so remarkable. And then it also is just, I don't know, it just feels so complete in every way, shape, and form. And then with the collaborations too, like the way features are used on this. Babylon by Bus is so good.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Babylon
good.
by Bus is so fucking. I mean, also,
we got to talk about the lines.
The goddamn comment boxes, but apparently, some people think that Shrapnel is one person and they sound like Tyler the Creator.
Don't do that. Don't do this. This is why we don't read. This is why we don't read comment boxes. Oh my gosh, how many lines on there? The problem with this album, this is not really a problem. There are so many lines, and I don't even know where to start when it comes to like quoting my favorites.
Yeah,
it's actually it's that good, and it's also
bicycle kick. Let's start with that.
It's so funny. It's a funny album.
Yeah, it's a fun. That's the thing about Billy Woods is he's so goddamn funny. Like he deals with such like really heavy, morbid shit. Like, but he's hilarious about it. Like
he's very funny. What was the shit I sent you today? Baby steps. She was like something like I was just doing a bit, and he was like, "Oh." That was very funny. Like
I can't think of a single rapper who like is talking to themselves on the ad-lib track more than except for Cameron. And he makes Dipset references all the time, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, oh wow, look, another like great Quelle Chris feature on a Woods album. Wow, like I'm so surprised.
By the way, you owe it to yourself to find the vinyl tracks on this because Serengeti on Bad Dreams Are Just Dreams is nuts, just nuts. And I can't say enough. It's
the layover.
I talked about Yeezus. I can talk about this album too, and I've had this for like a 2 months,
a fraction of the time. Yeah,
but I feel like it's just this with Billy Woods all the time. I talked about this with the Ethiops. I talked about this with Haram. I've talked about Billy Woods like so much on this. He might as well be the Free Space. Seriously.
But also, like, oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, every song in here, and we got to talk about. I mean, Woods himself is obviously one of the best writers living. We know this. Everybody knows this. The production on this is just gorgeous. Oh my! It's I think it's the. Now, what I do think is, I think it's the best let me phrase it. It's my favorite soundscape of any Woods project. I'll say that. Because to me, it is the one that I will go back and listen to, and I've listened to this album a lot, like nonstop. I mean, I've listened to Billy Woods, in my opinion, has like 4 Stone Cold classics at least. So I've listened to plenty of Woods. 4
Stone Cold classics.
Yeah.
Which
but
would
this
you
one,
say?
which would I say? Let's say. So this one, I'll be recency biased. Ethiops, Hiding Places, Brass. Oh fuck, the Arm & Hammer shit. Maybe more. I would say Hiding Places. I mean, No Knowns is great too, but I don't think it's like a classic or anything. History of Resolve Me is great, but I don't. It's not one of my favorites.
History of Resolve Me is like immense, though. That's the thing. It's like you listen to that.
That's true. It might deserve that label. It is really, really good. I don't listen to it that much, but I have it rated very.
Like that was the first one I tried to listen to way back in the day because of the Weiss review, and then it's just like I can't deal with this. And then I listened to Dour Candy, and then that was the one that got me into him. And then like I'm just thinking about this right now, and like it calls back to Hiding Places so much. Like the very first track has the long. It's either the first. Yeah, I think it's the first track. Is like remember God is a hater. You know what that calls back to? SpongeBob.
Yeah.
You promised.
God is a hater is a great line.
Still yelling God. Because the only person who can yell at God is Billy Woods.
Wait, we got to talk about 2 things. You got to clear out for me talking about my favorite song on here first, which is NYC Tap Water, which is a very resonant to me for a couple of things. One,
well, I was going to say, first of all, you'd be the expert on that, but
shout out to NYC Tap Water. I will be there very, very shortly, back home. But it captures this very interesting thing of it's very languid, and it has, to me, it just evokes summertime evenings, those lazy, like 7:30 p.m. sun still, hanging in the sky type evenings. There's not a lot going on. You're just kind of sitting and, just looking out your window or something like that, or I guess in Billy Woods' case, you're on your old block where you used to live, and you're just people watching and shit like that. I really love how the vibe of that song is just so beautiful, and it's jazzy, but it's not like in your face about it. It just kind of sits in the background. I love the part when you talk about like the cat missed me the most more than any other people. And then he talks about I might have seen Don Cheadle in the bodega or something, or yeah. I also love that you talk about talking yourself with the ad libs when Billy Wood says he's talking about $400 Japanese jeans, and then he's like, they're actually very comfortable.
They're comfortable.
Yeah, they're comfortable though. So, but yeah, I love.
Though I love the way he flows on sound. I'm just like looking at the fucking track.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. God, I love the way you like the way Siegel comes up with instrumentals that directly evoke what he's trying to convey on the songs. That
it's just a perfect way to like. It's
also
so
the sequencing on it too. This is something I was trying to get across. I don't think I really did when we were talking about Ethiops and like the sequencing, and I think it comes across even better here though because it's supposed to be a journey. Like it's him on tour, the maps. Like it starts off somewhere, and especially with the writing too. Like and like it's full circle. Like you have little sequences. He's on bus. He's on tour. He's at sound check, and then yeah. This honestly,
do we do the Danny? Do we do the Danny? I mean,
I yelled my dick. What else?
Yeah, which is enough. But like, when he said, what did he say?
The mad villain.
Oh,
quote.
tell him drive through like 20-piece nuggets. I'm broke like an ice cream machine. You rubbish.
Y'all rubbish. Oh my
also,
God.
when he said Sorrento paint a house at the Fountain Blue, that was fire. Because I think he's referencing the hotel in Miami.
Yeah.
That's such a weird reference, but that's also so. Yeah, that's so cool.
I mean, you have my 2. Like, if you got Earl on that song, you have my 3 favorite rappers.
The Trinity, the Holy Trinity.
Yeah. Yeah. unfucking believable, man. This is everything about this. It's got that whole quality that Mad Villain and some rap songs have, where every piece works together, but every piece also works individually. And it's like short stories, but it's also a whole holistic piece too. And also, again, one producer too. So, and I hate to say the jazz thing as well, but yeah, Siegel's like doing it with instruments, and unfortunately I don't want to like go upstairs because I have the CD up there, but you have live instrumentation on here. Shout out to Mike Parvizi, shout out to the Jefferson Park Boys. Like, you have a lot of really well done instrumentation on everything. It's a really well thought out, well arranged album, similar to the Rap for Our Purple Moonlight Pages in that way, which Siegel had his hand in as well. So, just
yeah, I mean, I can't get enough of
every single aspect of this. This is going. Yeah. I really don't see any world unless Quaranto really just comes through and blows me the fuck away. I don't see any world in which this isn't my number one at the end of the year.
And I'll be honest, there's a shot that it is mine right now, because it's number 2 and it's locked into that slot. Like I love this so much, and one thing that I find so refreshing about it is it's also just not something. I mean, I joke a lot about. I listen to a lot of internet brain rot, but I listen to a lot of different versions of hip hop and beyond. And this is just something where in its lane there is nothing that's even remotely touching this. Like I feel like so. Woods is just on another level, and he's long since solidified himself as one of the best we have. But this is just. There's a reason why it might end up being my favorite of his by the time we're at the end of the year, just because there's a listenability to it as well that I feel like can't be understated. And every single song doesn't have anything I would change on it, which is, I mean, that's about as good as highest praise I could say.
I can't believe I'm bringing comment box negativity into this, but some fucking nerd in the comment box that can't keep pretending I like this shit. Fine, don't stop. No one's
pretending to like anything is very uncool. I don't know.
What the fuck? Why are you wasting your time? Go play Call of Duty, bitch. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
I would also like to say that if you listen to this on, I don't know how much you listen to it on Spotify. You probably have it downloaded, whatever. But if you have it on Spotify and you click on some of those individual songs and you like go up to send a link to somebody, the animation, the album cover will animate, and the passengers and shit on the plane seats and whatever will like be doing the actual things. Like they'll be doing.
That surprised me, because everything about this is so well thought out. Like, they have the vinyl with the different track list. Like, if you look at again, like the CD has the Musgraves illustrations for everything. Like, everything about this is so well considered. Like, Woods is an artist. Like, again, going back to High Bias, like just the way he puts his label together, his art, the artist on his label. You know what I mean? Like, it's just remarkable. We're lucky to have Backwoods. We're lucky to have this album. I don't want to take up any more of your time with my fucking babbling on this shit. It's remarkable. There's nothing I would change about this. It's fucking perfect.
You will be hearing about it again, listeners.
No hair out of place. Perfect.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. I think it could very well be 5 stars for me down the road as well. I am not ruling it out, as the quote graphic says that I like to reference in the server. I think that shout out to I forget, formerly known as Brother King. I forget what his username is now, but he said to us in the server, he was like, Maps and If Looks Could Kill came out on the same day. This is a Living on Borrowed Time server day, and that's so true. It's true.
He said something like, if Mach or Drew came out with something, like, it'd be like whatever. And I said Fahim's probably going to come out with something.
Yeah. Yeah. If we had a Mach and Fahim collab, and then Cardi came out of nowhere, it would just be the whole server. But yeah. I guess we'll do We'll do the Kalera record.
Kalela. So
yeah. So this was so you heard it for first or second time in full.
Second
today.
time. First
Second
time full, because obviously like everything interrupts me all the time. But yeah, it was the first time I heard it in full today. I'd heard most of it previously. I fucking love it. I have it at a 9 because I wanted to reserve the 10 until I live with it a little more. I fucking love it though. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's
very moving and just wonderfully textured, wonderfully thought over, and I've loved everything she's done. So,
she's really, and each album that she's done has been wholly unique compared to the previous one. Even down to like the art design and everything. I find her such a compelling and great artist, and I thought she was a great artist. Previously with Take Me Apart and Hallucinogen and even back to Cut For Me is when I first heard her way back in the day. I think I saw her on like a Fader list in 2013, and that's how I listened to her. But yeah, I always liked her stuff, and I thought Take Me Apart was excellent. But this one right here, like this is a classic album. Like I think this could be I think this is really, 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 really special. It is beautiful, like you said, beautiful, layered, textured, all the words you could possibly say. I can't speak highly enough about it. Every single transition is like note perfect. The songwriting, her voice, how she uses it, whether it's in the conventional pop songwriting fashion, like a song like Contact, or how she uses it as an instrument more in some of the first couple songs or On the Run. I think the highlight of the album, even though Contact is one of the best songs of the year, it's Hector said it perfectly in the server. He's like, when I heard that little when I heard the beat on Contact for the first time, like when it was a single, I just knew it was gonna be special and something to that effect. And he was right. It's so easy to love. What else? But yeah, I mean, I was gonna say my highlight. I'm getting ahead of myself, but the highlight for me is the title track, Raven, Into Bruises, like those two songs. Fucking gorgeous music, man. Like, I just don't know how anyone will listen to that and not be incredibly moved by like the bridge on that song, like Raven, when she really goes for it and like, not strains her voice, but stretches her voice a little bit, and then she does the whole like over the line, but it feels just right, like that whole thing, and then the beat comes in when it's like just right, and then it gets in that usual garage pattern, and that transition goes right into Bruises, and Bruises starts with the beat, and obviously if you listen to the album, you know what I'm talking about. So I'm just doing a poor approximation of it, but man, do I love that fucking 2-song run, and she's just crushing it. Like this is an incredible album. It was better than I thought it was going to be. I was looking forward to it because I love the single so much, but everything from the atmosphere to the vocals, the songwriting, Too Broke to Care, shout out to him, talked about how it sounded like futuristic and like nostalgic at the same time, kind of like a 2020s and 1990s fusion. And I would totally agree. I think this is like a special album. So that's why it edged out Maps, another special album, for my mid-year number 1. So yeah, there's my rant.
It's lyrical without needing to be, I don't know. It feels lyrical without being wordy.
Yeah, I think it's a good way of putting it because it's very straightforward. The songs are, for the most part, they don't have more than like 2 verses.
Right. Yeah, that's the best way I can put it. Like, without having listened to it very much, unfortunately, it feels like it gets across its point without belaboring its point.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't be happier with it. Shout out to Kalela. Shout out to all the great music we've had this year. Because what do you think? How the year's gone? I think it's been a pretty great year, as we always seem to say.
I know. I feel like we do. One of the things that I was like, whenever I do preparation for the show, I kind of try and go through lists on the site, and one of the users I really like is Glave, I don't know how you pronounce it, and he had his hip hop list, and he said it seems like the year's getting off to a slow start, and I'm like, I disagree. Like, I think that we've been spoiled for choice this year. It was just this hip hop list, and I feel like we're spoiled for choice most years. Like, I think we've got a lot of good shit. Like. And sometimes I feel like we complain a lot on this show. Like, I mean, and I feel like it's mainly this time because I just spent too much time in the fucking comment boxes. Like, there's nothing to complain about. We've got a lot of great art. We always do. And, like, no matter how bad shit is, we always have a lot of great art. That's how we survive, no matter what. You know what?
Exactly.
And
great art will save us. And as it has for many, many years.
That's right. No matter what, we're living off borrowed time. And our intro music, as it always is by our favorite artist on this show, his instrumental, Billy Woods, done by Yoon Classic, the borrowed time instrumental. Rest in peace to Daniel Doomla, MF Doom. And our outro music, as always, is Can Kick, Stagnated Pace. We are living off borrowed time. Peace out, everybody.
It ain't gonna never stop. 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 It ain't gonna never stop.
Time will tell. Time is yet to be conquered by man. But when the time is right, perhaps the greatest revelation of all time will dawn upon us.